My daughter sent me a text message that read, "Do not come to my wedding. My husband hates you, and we do not want you to ruin our aesthetic. Just transfer the money and stay home." I read those words 3 times. I did not cry. I did not scream. I simply smiled a cold, tired smile and walked to my laptop. I logged into the family bank account and clicked a single button that said, "Freeze all assets." At dawn, my phone screen lit up with 120 missed calls, and the voicemails were not asking. They were begging. I am Quincy Hayes, 68 years old, and I have spent my entire life moving mountains so my daughter would never have to climb one. I worked my way up from loading crates on the shipping docks to becoming the director of logistics for the largest maritime transport company on the East Coast. I know how to manage supply chains. I know how to negotiate with unions, and I know how to spot a bad deal from a mile away. Unfortunately, the worst deal of my life was standing at the altar with my daughter Jasmine. Before I tell you how I brought a fraudulent dynasty to its knees, please let me know which city you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by someone who was spending your hard-earned money. The morning of the wedding started with a Windsor knot. I stood before the mirror in my master bedroom, adjusting the silk tie my late wife Esther had given me for our 30th anniversary. My hands are old now. The skin is dark and weathered map of decades of hard labor and late nights, but they are steady. I wanted to look perfect for Jasmine. Even though I knew Hunter and his family looked down on me, I wanted to show them that Quincy Hayes commands respect, not because of who his ancestors were, but because of who he is. I brushed lint from the shoulder of my tuxedo. It was a custom-fit Italian wool suit, the kind of quality that whispers rather than shouts. On the dresser sat a creamy white envelope. It was thick. Inside was a cashier check for $150,000. This was not just money. This was my lifeblood. This was overtime shifts in the freezing rain. This was missed holidays. This was the nest egg Esther and I had built so Jasmine could start her life debt-free. I picked up the envelope and felt its weight. I imagined the look on Jasmine's face when I handed it to her during the father-daughter dance. I imagined Hunter finally showing me a shred of gratitude. I was a fool. The phone buzzed against the mahogany surface of the dresser. It was a long vibration, the kind that signals a long message. I checked the time. It was 2 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to begin at the luxury resort I had paid for. I assumed it was Jasmine asking if I had remembered her favorite flowers, or if I was on my way. I picked up the phone and unlocked the screen. The name Jasmine flashed at the top. The message was long, but my eyes locked onto the first sentence, and then the rest blurred into a sharp, painful focus. The text read exactly like this. Billed to Quincy Hayes. Daddy, please do not come to the venue today. I know this hurts, but Hunter and his parents feel very uncomfortable with you there. Hunter says your presence changes the vibe and makes his friends feel tense. We are trying to maintain a certain aesthetic for the magazine photos, and honestly, you just do not fit in. Please understand, this is my special day, and I need it to be perfect. You can just transfer the gift money to our joint account. We will visit you after the honeymoon when things settle down. Love you. My heart did not break. It stopped. The air in the room seemed to vanish. I stood there in my tuxedo, holding the phone that had just delivered my eviction notice from my own daughter's life. I looked at the mirror. I saw a man who had given everything. Then I looked at the envelope on the dresser. $150,000. Transfer the gift money. That was the line that turned my shock into ice. They did not want me, but they felt entitled to my labor. They wanted the fruit, but they wanted to cut down the tree. I slowly placed the envelope back on the dresser. I did not throw it. I placed it down with terrifying precision. I needed to understand how we got here. My mind flashed back to 3 specific moments, 3 warnings I had ignored because I wanted Jasmine to be happy. The first memory hit me like a physical blow. It was 6 months ago, the first time I met Hunter. Jasmine brought him to dinner at a steakhouse downtown. I stood up to shake his hand. I have a firm grip. It is the handshake of a man who builds things. Hunter took my hand loosely, like he was touching something dirty. He pulled his hand away quickly, and I watched him wipe his palm on his beige trousers. He did not think I saw it, but I see everything. Then he looked at my watch. It was a simple, timeless piece. He sneered and said, "Nice replica, Quincy. Is that from the street vendors in the city?" I told him it was a gift from the CEO of my company for 25 years of service. Hunter just laughed and said, Oh, I guess they give those out to everyone in the lower brackets to keep morale up. Jasmine laughed with him. She touched his arm and said, "Oh, Hunter, stop teasing him." She did not defend me. She managed his rudeness like it was a quirky personality trait. The second memory was at their engagement party. It was held at a country club that Hunter parents belonged to, a place where the only people who looked like me were carrying trays. I was standing near the bar holding a glass of scotch. Hunter walked up with two of his friends. They were loud and already drunk. Hunter did not introduce me as his father-in-law. He turned to me and handed me his empty glass. He said, "Hey, Pops, be a good sport and get me a refill. Top shelf only. Do not give me the cheap stuff." His friends chuckled. I stared at him. I said, "I am not the waiter, Hunter. I am the man paying for this open bar." He blinked his eyes, glazing over with that arrogant dismissiveness, and said, "Relax, Quincy. It was a joke. You people are always so sensitive." You people. The words hung in the air. I looked at Jasmine across the room. She saw it. She saw him disrespect me. She turned away and pretended to adjust her dress. The third memory was the nail in the coffin. It was 2 weeks ago. I was at my house helping Jasmine go over the guest list. Hunter was there, playing video games on his phone while I did the work. I asked him about the seating arrangements. I noticed my table was in the back, near the kitchen doors. I asked if this was a mistake. Hunter did not even look up from his screen. He said, "No, that is strategic. My parents are at the head table, with the senator and the investors. We put you in the back, so you would be more comfortable. You know around the staff. You probably have more in common with them anyway, right?" I stood up that day. I was ready to throw him out. But Jasmine grabbed my hand. Her eyes were pleading. She whispered, "Daddy, please. He is just stressed. Do not ruin this for me." I sat down. I swallowed my pride. I swallowed it until it tasted like bile. And now, standing in my bedroom with the text message glowing on my screen, I realized I was done swallowing. The flashbacks ended. The silence in the room was absolute. I was no longer the father. I was the director of logistics, and I had just identified a critical failure in the supply chain, a liability. I walked over to my desk. I sat down in my leather chair. I did not rush. My movements were calculated. I opened my laptop. The screen came to life. I navigated to the bank website. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing in the secure password. I accessed the main dashboard. There it was, the Jasmine Wedding Fund. It was a sub-account attached to my primary holding. I had set it up that way to make transfers easier and to monitor the spending. I saw the balance. It was high. I had deposited $50,000 earlier that week for the final vendor payments. Hunter and Jasmine thought that money was theirs. They thought the credit cards linked to that account were magic wands that would never run out of power. I clicked on the administrative settings. I saw the list of authorized users. Jasmine Hayes, Hunter. I selected both names. My mouse cursor hovered over the option that said, "Remove authorization." I did not hesitate. I clicked. The screen refreshed. Unauthorized. But that was not enough. I needed to stop the bleeding completely. I went to the account status. I selected the option Freeze all assets due to suspicious activity. A warning box popped up asking if I was sure. It warned that all linked cards would be declined immediately, and any pending transactions would be canceled. I looked at the text message one last time. "You just do not fit in," I whispered to the empty room. "Well, let us see how you fit in when the bill arrives." I pressed enter. The screen processed for a second, and then a red banner appeared across the top. Account frozen. Status locked. Fraud alert active. I sat back in my chair. I felt a strange sensation. It was not joy. It was the cold, hard satisfaction of balance being restored. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the closet. I took off my tuxedo jacket and hung it up carefully. I loosened the Windsor knot. I took off the polished shoes. I was not going to a wedding today. I was going to make a cup of coffee and watch the game. I did not know it yet, but 10 miles away at the exclusive resort, the band was about to stop playing, and the waiters were about to stop pouring. The chaos I had just unleashed with a single click was traveling through the digital fiber optics straight to the card terminal, where Hunter was standing, trying to pay for a bottle of vintage champagne to impress his friends. The storm was coming, and I was the eye of the hurricane. I took a sip of water and sat on my couch. The phone on the dresser buzzed again. Then again. Then it started a continuous vibration that sounded like an angry hornet trapped in a jar. I did not look at it. I picked up the remote and turned on the television. The game was just starting. This was only the beginning. I drove my 12-year-old sedan past the main gate of the Sapphire Cove Resort. The valet attendants in their white jackets did not even look at me. To them, I was just another invisible old man in a reliable car, probably a vendor or a member of the cleaning staff. That was exactly how I wanted it. I knew this resort better than the owners did. 15 years ago, I had designed the entire logistical framework for their supply deliveries. I knew every service entrance, every loading dock, and every security blind spot. I did not park in the guest lot. I drove around back to the employee entrance near the kitchens. I reached into my glove compartment and pulled out an old security badge. It was expired, but I knew the magnetic strip would still open the side door, because I was the one who told them never to upgrade the firmware on the secondary readers to save money. I swiped the card. The light turned green with a satisfying click. I walked down the long concrete hallway that smelled of industrial sanitizer and expensive seafood. I passed busy line cooks and waiters carrying trays of champagne. No one stopped me. I walked with the confidence of a man who owns the building. I made my way to the server room on the second floor. This room controlled the internal network and the security camera feeds for the private suites. I let myself in. The room was cool and hummed with the sound of servers. I pulled up a chair and logged into the guest monitoring system, using the master override code I had memorized a decade ago. I typed in the room number for the groom's suite, Suite 404. The screen flickered and then settled into a crystal-clear, high-definition image. What I saw made my blood run cold. Hunter was there, lounging on a velvet sofa that cost more than my first car. He was surrounded by 4 of his friends, men who looked exactly like him, with their slicked-back hair and expensive watches. They were drinking the 25-year-old scotch I had paid for. Jasmine was there too. She was sitting on the arm of the sofa, looking radiant in her white dress, but her posture was submissive. She was smiling, but her eyes were darting around the room, seeking approval. I turned up the volume on the console. The audio feed was crisp. I wanted to hear them. I needed to hear them. Hunter was holding a cigar. He took a puff and blew the smoke toward the ceiling. He laughed a deep, arrogant sound that grated on my nerves. He said, "Honestly, guys, it is a relief the old man is not coming. I mean, can you imagine him walking around here? He would probably start asking the waiters how much they make, or try to fix a loose hinge on a door. It is embarrassing." One of his friends, a tall man named Brad, swirled his drink and asked, "But is he cool with just sending the money? I mean, that is a lot of cash to hand over without getting a free dinner." Hunter scoffed. He leaned back and patted Jasmine on the leg like she was a pet. He said, "Quincy does not have a choice. The man is desperate for connection. He thinks if he buys us things, we will let him play grandfather to our kids. He is a cash cow. You milk him, you do not invite him to the dinner table. Besides, he does not fit the brand. Look around. This is old money energy. Quincy is new money. Actually, he is not even new money. He is just labor money. There is a smell to it." My hand gripped the edge of the desk. Labor money. He was mocking the sweat and the back-breaking work that had paid for the suit he was wearing. I looked at Jasmine on the screen. I waited for her to defend me. I waited for her to slap him. I waited for her to say that her father worked harder than any of them. Instead, Jasmine giggled. She took a sip of champagne and said, "Oh, stop it, Hunter. You are terrible. But you are right. Daddy can be very intense. He always wants to tell these long, boring stories about the shipping docks. It creates such an awkward vibe. It is better this way. We can just take the photos and send him a nice thank you card. He will be fine." She paused and then added, "Besides, once the transfer goes through, we can finally put a down payment on that vacation house in the Hamptons. I am so tired of living in the city." Hunter kissed her cheek and said, "That is my girl. Do not worry about Quincy. He is simple. He is happy just thinking he is helping. We are doing him a favor, really. We are letting him feel useful." The room on the screen erupted in laughter. They were toasting to my stupidity. They were toasting to the old man who paid the bills and stayed out of sight. I stared at the screen. The last thread of hope I had held on to snapped. There was no misunderstanding here. There was no stress-induced behavior. This was who they were. They were parasites. And Jasmine, my little girl, who I had carried on my shoulders and taught to ride a bike, had become the host. I sat back in the chair in the server room. The hum of the computers sounded like a countdown. I did not feel anger anymore. I felt clarity. Absolute terrifying clarity. I took out my phone. It was time to make the call. I dialed the private number for the fraud department of my bank. I did not call the general hotline. I called the direct line for high net worth clients. I knew the director of the department. We played golf occasionally. The voice on the other end answered on the second ring. "Quincy, good afternoon. To what do I owe the pleasure? Is everything all right with the transfer limits for the wedding?" I spoke calmly. My voice did not shake. "Hello, David. No, everything is not all right. I need to report a massive security breach." David's tone changed instantly. He went from friendly to professional. "What happened, Quincy? Tell me." I looked at the screen where Hunter was now pouring another glass of my scotch. I said, "I have reason to believe that the authorized users on my secondary accounts have been engaging in fraudulent activity. They have been misrepresenting their financial status and using my funds under false pretenses. I believe this is a case of long-term financial elder abuse." There was a silence on the line. The term elder abuse is a trigger word in banking. It initiates protocols that are swift and merciless. David said, "I understand. That is a serious accusation, Quincy. If we initiate this protocol, it locks everything, not just the credit cards. We are talking about the mortgage on the house that is held by your LLC. We are talking about the car leases. We are talking about the insurance policies linked to the accounts. Everything freezes until a full forensic audit is completed. That could take weeks or even months." I watched Jasmine laughing on the screen. She looked so happy spending money she had not earned. I said, "David, that is exactly what I want. I want a full freeze. I want the assets seized. I want the credit lines terminated immediately. And I want you to flag the current transactions at the Sapphire Cove Resort as unauthorized." David hesitated. "Quincy, are you sure? This is your daughter we are talking about." I leaned into the phone. I said, "David, I am looking at a video feed right now. The people in that room are not my family. They are thieves, and I am done being their victim. Execute the freeze. Authorization code Alpha Sierra 99. I heard the typing on the other end. It was the sound of a guillotine blade being hoisted up. David said, "All right, Quincy, it is done. The system is updating now. The alerts will hit the merchant terminals in less than 60 seconds. I said, "Thank you, David. I owe you a drink." I hung up the phone. I looked back at the screen. Hunter was standing up, raising his glass for another toast. He said, "To the good life, and to the people who pay for it." Suddenly the door to their suite opened. It was the resort manager. He did not have a bottle of champagne in his hand. He had a wireless payment terminal and a very serious expression on his face. I leaned forward in my chair. The show was about to begin. I watched as the manager walked up to Hunter. I could not hear what he was saying because the microphone on the camera was picking up the background music, but I could see the body language. Hunter's smile vanished. He looked confused. He pointed at Jasmine. Jasmine looked at her phone. She started tapping the screen frantically. I checked my own phone. A notification popped up from the banking app. Alert. Transaction declined. Sapphire Cove Resort. Amount $50,000. Reason? Card reported stolen. I smiled. On the screen, Hunter was now shouting. He was waving his arms. The manager was shaking his head. He signaled to the security guards standing in the hallway. Jasmine grabbed Hunter's arm. She looked terrified. Her fairy tale was dissolving in real time. I stood up. I had seen enough. I did not need to watch the rest from a dark room. I wanted to feel the fresh air. I wanted to drive home and sit in my recliner, knowing that for the first time in years, I was truly free. I walked out of the server room. I walked back down the long concrete hallway. The kitchen staff was still bustling, but the atmosphere had changed. A waiter ran past me looking panicked. He said to a busboy, "Hey, hold the lobster service for the Hayes wedding. The manager says the credit card bounced. They might be canceling the whole thing." I kept walking. I pushed open the heavy metal door and stepped out into the sunlight. The air smelled of sea salt and justice. I got into my old reliable sedan. I put the key in the ignition. The engine purred. As I drove away, I saw a police cruiser turning into the main entrance with its lights flashing. I turned on the radio. Some smooth jazz started playing. It was going to be a beautiful afternoon. The string quartet was playing a piece by Vivaldi when the music died. It did not fade out gracefully the way it does at the end of a movie. It stopped abruptly, with a discordant screech of a violin bow slipping across the strings. The sudden silence in the grand ballroom of the Sapphire Cove Resort was heavy and suffocating. At the center of the room, Hunter was holding a crystal flute of champagne high in the air, ready to propose a toast to his own brilliance. He looked like a statue of arrogance frozen in time. The bubbles in his glass were the only things moving. I was not there to see it with my own eyes, but I knew exactly how it unfolded. I had orchestrated this symphony of humiliation, and I knew the rhythm of disaster perfectly. The head waiter, a man named Samuel, who I had helped get a union contract 5 years ago, signaled his team. Like a well-drilled military unit, 20 servers stopped in their tracks. They did not put the plates of lobster thermidor down on the tables. They turned around in unison and began marching back toward the kitchen. The sound of their footsteps on the marble floor echoed through the silent room. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. These were the elite of the city, the people Hunter was so desperate to impress. They were not used to being denied anything, let alone their dinner. The resort manager, Mr. Henderson, walked onto the floor. He was not smiling. In the hospitality industry, a manager walking onto the floor in the middle of a service is never a good sign. It is the equivalent of a grim reaper appearing at a bedside. He walked straight past the confused guests. He walked past the flower arrangements that had cost me $5,000. He walked straight to Hunter. I can imagine the look on Hunter's face. It would have shifted from confusion to indignation. He lowered his glass. He probably thought the manager was coming to compliment him on his suit, or to offer him a complimentary bottle of their rarest vintage. He was wrong. Mr. Henderson stopped 3 feet from the groom. He did not whisper. He spoke in a volume that was perfectly calibrated to be heard by the surrounding tables, but professional enough to avoid shouting. He said, "Mr. Bishop, we have a problem with the payment authorization for the venue and the catering. The primary card on file has been flagged as stolen, and the bank has issued a stop payment order on all pending transactions." The words hung in the air like smoke. Stolen. Stop payment. Hunter's face turned a shade of crimson that matched the roses on the tables. He laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound that fooled no one. He said, "Do not be ridiculous, Henderson. Run it again. My father-in-law authorized everything. It is a glitch. Your machines are garbage. Run it again, right now." Mr. Henderson did not blink. He held up the wireless payment terminal. He said, "I have run it 3 times, sir. I also tried the secondary card you provided for the deposit. Both have been declined with a code red fraud alert. Per our policy and the instructions from the bank, we must secure an alternative form of payment immediately, or we are required to cease all services and ask you to vacate the premises. The outstanding balance for the day is $52,000. We need a cashier check or a verified transfer. Now." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The guests were no longer confused. They were judging. These were people who smelled weakness the way sharks smell blood in the water. Hunter looked at them. He saw the senator checking his watch. He saw his investment banker friends exchanging awkward glances. The facade of the wealthy, successful entrepreneur was cracking, and the plaster was falling off in chunks. Hunter snatched the machine from the manager's hand. He jammed his card into the slot with violent force. He typed in his PIN number, his fingers trembling with rage. The machine beeped. It was a loud, sharp tone that signaled failure. Transaction not authorized. He pulled the card out and jammed it in again. Beep. Transaction not authorized. He screamed at the machine. He hit it against his palm. He looked like a child whose toy had run out of batteries. "Do you know who I am?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "Do you know who my family is? We will sue this place into the ground. I will have your job, Henderson. I will have you parking cars by tomorrow morning." Mr. Henderson took the machine back calmly. He signaled to 2 large security guards standing by the entrance. He said, "Sir, if you cannot pay, you need to leave. We have guests arriving for the evening gala, and we need to clear the room." That was the breaking point. The guests began to stand up. They did not finish their drinks. They did not say goodbye to the bride and groom. They simply engaged their survival instincts, social survival. Being associated with a fraud is contagious in their world. The senator was the first to move. He buttoned his jacket, gave a polite but dismissive nod to no one in particular, and walked briskly toward the exit. The others followed. It was a mass exodus. Jasmine stood alone near the head table. She looked small. Her designer dress looked like a costume she was wearing for a play that had been canceled. She watched as her friends, the people she had ignored me for, walked out the door without looking back. She looked at Hunter, who was still arguing with security, and then she looked at her phone. Back in my living room, I was settling into my leather recliner. I had a cup of black coffee in my hand, and the pre-game show was on the television. My house was quiet. It was peaceful. The phone on the coffee table began to vibrate. I looked at the screen. It was Jasmine. I let it ring 3 times. 1, 2, 3. I took a sip of coffee. I wanted her to feel the panic rising in her throat. I wanted her to feel the helplessness of having no safety net. I swiped the green button and put the phone to my ear. I did not say hello. I just waited. "Daddy!" she screamed. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was a mixture of sobbing and hyperventilating. "Daddy, you have to help us. The bank. They froze everything. They are kicking us out. The police are coming. Everyone is leaving. Hunter card is not working. You have to call them. You have to transfer the money now. Please, Daddy, do something." I listened to her hysteria. It washed over me like a wave, but I was a rock. I did not move. I did not feel the urge to jump up and save her. That part of me had died when she stood by and let her husband mock my life work. I spoke calmly. My voice was steady and devoid of emotion. I sounded like a recorded customer service message. "Jasmine, calm down," I said. "I am sitting here watching the game. What is going on?" She gasped for air. "The bank, Daddy. The account is locked. They said it is fraud. You have to call the bank manager. You know him. Tell him to unlock it. We need $50,000 right now." I leaned back in my chair. I scratched my chin. "Oh, that," I said casually. "Yes, I got a notification about that earlier. The bank called me. They detected some unusual activity on the secondary cards. You know, spending at a luxury resort usually triggers a security algorithm if the primary account holder is not present. Since I am not there, the system flagged it as identity theft." Jasmine screamed again. "Well, tell them it is not theft. Tell them it is me. Unlock it. Fix it." I looked at the clock on the wall. "I cannot do that, Jasmine," I said. I asked them about the override procedure. Since the fraud alert is code red, they have to do a full investigation. It is a federal banking regulation. They have to review the spending history for the last 2 years to ensure no other assets were compromised. Jasmine was crying harder now. "How long?" she asked. "How long will that take?" I took another sip of coffee. 48 hours, I said. Minimum. Maybe longer since it is the weekend. The fraud department does not work on Sundays. 48 hours, she shrieked. "But we are being thrown out now. Hunter is fighting with security. We have nowhere to go. Our house keys are in the bridal suite, and they locked us out. Daddy, you have to wire cash. Just send it from your personal savings." I paused. I let the silence stretch for 5 seconds. "I cannot do that," I repeated. "When they freeze the main account, they freeze everything linked to my social security number. My personal savings, my retirement, the equity line. It is all frozen, Jasmine. I have about $20 in my pocket until Monday morning." "But that is impossible," she sobbed. "You are Quincy Hayes. You always have a backup plan." "I do have a backup plan," I said. "My backup plan is to stay home and wait for the bank to finish their job. I suggest you and Hunter find a way to pay your bill. Maybe his parents can help. They are sitting at the head table, right? Ask them." There was a silence on the other end, a heavy realization. "They left," she whispered. "Everyone left." "Well," I said, "I guess you better go too." "I have to go now, Jasmine. The game is starting, and I do not want to miss the kickoff. Good luck with the manager." I pulled the phone away from my ear. I could still hear her screaming my name. "Daddy, wait. Daddy, please." I pressed the red button. The screaming stopped. I placed the phone face down on the table. On the television, the referee blew the whistle to start the game. I watched the kickoff. I felt a deep sense of calm. I knew exactly where they would go next. They would go to the house they thought they owned, the house where I had already changed the digital locks remotely 10 minutes ago. The lesson was just beginning. The walk from the lobby of the Sapphire Cove Resort to the parking lot is a 1/4 of a mile long. It is a beautiful walk, lined with palm trees and manicured hedges, meant to be enjoyed while strolling with a cocktail. It is not meant to be walked in 6-inch stilettos, while dragging 3 heavy suitcases and a garment bag. I watched the GPS tracker on Hunter's car move slowly out of the valet zone. I knew exactly what was happening because I know the policy of that resort better than anyone. No payment means no service. That includes the bellhops and the valet drivers. If you cannot tip, you carry your own bags. Hunter was furious. I could imagine the veins bulging in his neck. He was wearing a $3,000 tuxedo, but right now he looked like a fired butler. He was dragging 2 massive Louis Vuitton trunks across the asphalt. The wheels were not designed for rough pavement. They clicked and rattled loudly, a rhythm of failure that echoed off the hotel walls. Jasmine was stumbling behind him. Her wedding dress, the one that cost $12,000, was dragging on the ground. The hem was turning black from the oil and dirt of the parking lot. She was holding a bag of wedding favors that they had not been able to give out. She looked back at the hotel entrance, hoping someone would run out and save them. No one came. The valet attendants stood with their hands clasped behind their backs, looking at the sky, looking at the ground, looking anywhere but at the couple who had just been publicly evicted. Hunter shouted at Jasmine to hurry up. He did not offer to help her. He threw his bags into the trunk of his Porsche with a violent thud. He did not care if the expensive leather scratched. He just wanted to escape the eyes of the staff. He wanted to escape the reality that for the first time in his life, his last name was not a currency he could spend. They got into the car. The engine roared to life. It was an aggressive sound. Hunter peeled out of the lot, leaving a skid mark on the pavement. It was a childish display of power from a man who had none left. I took a sip of my iced tea in my living room. I checked the time. It would take them 20 minutes to drive to the house they called their dream home, the house they told their friends they had bought with the profits from Hunter crypto investments, the house that was actually owned by Hayes Logistics LLC, a company they did not know existed. The drive must have been excruciating. I can only guess the conversation. Hunter blaming the bank, Hunter blaming me, Jasmine crying and ruining her makeup. They probably convinced themselves that once they got home, everything would be fine. They would open a bottle of wine, order takeout, and laugh about this nightmare. They thought the house was their sanctuary. They were wrong. The house was not a sanctuary. It was a fortress, and I held the keys. They pulled into the driveway of the colonial-style mansion in the prestigious Hillcrest neighborhood. It was getting dark. The porch lights were off. I had disabled the automatic timer remotely. The house loomed in the shadows, dark and uninviting. Hunter parked the car crookedly in the driveway. He did not bother to pull into the garage, because the garage door opener was linked to the Wi-Fi system I had just reset. They got out of the car. The silence of the suburbs was heavy. In this neighborhood, a loud voice triggers neighborhood watch alerts within seconds. Hunter marched up the front steps. He reached for the smart lock on the front door. He punched in the code, 1985, his birth year. A simple code for a simple man. The keypad beeped. It was a low, dissonant tone. The small light on the lock flashed red. Hunter paused. He wiped his sweaty palms on his tuxedo pants. He typed the code again, slower this time. 1985. Beep. Red light. He groaned. He turned to Jasmine, who was standing at the bottom of the steps, holding her dress up to keep it off the wet grass. He said, "The damn lock is glitching. Give me your phone. I need to use the app." Jasmine fumbled in her purse. She handed him her phone. Hunter opened the smart home application. He tapped the unlock icon. The screen loaded for a second. Then a message popped up. "User access revoked. Please contact the administrator." Hunter stared at the phone. He tapped the screen again and again. His tapping turned into pounding. "What does that mean?" he screamed. "Who is the administrator?" "I am the administrator. I bought this house." He was lying to himself, even now. He had never signed a deed. He had signed a lease agreement with a holding company he thought was a formality. He threw Jasmine's phone onto the porch furniture. He grabbed the door handle and rattled it. It was locked tight. The deadbolt was a solid piece of steel. I had installed myself. "Open the door," he shouted at the wood. "Open up." Jasmine ran up the steps. "Hunter, please stop screaming. The neighbors will hear you. Just try the back door. Maybe we left it unlocked." Hunter ignored her. The rage took over. He felt trapped. He felt small. And men like Hunter hate feeling small. He stepped back and kicked the door. His expensive dress shoe slammed against the solid oak. Thud. He kicked it again, harder. Thud. "I'm going to break this down," he yelled. On the third kick, the vibration sensor inside the door frame triggered. The alarm did not chirp, it screamed. It was a high-decibel siren, designed to disorient intruders. It pierced the quiet evening air like a knife. Lights on the corners of the house began to flash, strobing white and red. Hunter covered his ears. He stumbled back. Jasmine screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the siren. "Turn it off," she yelled. "Use the code." Hunter scrambled to the keypad. He punched in the code again. 1985. Beep. Red light. The alarm continued to wail. Dogs in the neighborhood began to bark. Porch lights in the houses across the street flickered on. Curtains parted. Faces appeared in windows. The wealthy residents of Hillcrest did not like noise, and they certainly did not like domestic disturbances on their manicured lawns. Hunter looked around wildly. He grabbed a porch chair. For a second, I thought he was going to throw it through the window. He raised it over his head. Jasmine grabbed his arm. "No, Hunter, do not. That is breaking and entering." He shoved her away. "It is my house," he roared. "I can break whatever I want." He swung the chair. It smashed into the front bay window. The glass shattered with a loud crash. The alarm somehow seemed to get louder. Now they had done it. They had crossed the line from lockout to crime scene. I sat in my chair miles away, watching the notification on my security app. Glass break sensor, Zone 1. Alarm triggered. Police dispatched. I took another sip of tea. I did not call the police. The system did it automatically. And in Hillcrest, the police response time is under 4 minutes. The blue lights appeared before the sound of the sirens. They reflected off the wet pavement, illuminating the street in a chaotic strobe of blue and white. 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt in front of the driveway blocking Hunter Porsche. Hunter was standing on the porch, holding a piece of the broken chair. Jasmine was sitting on the steps, crying into her hands. 2 officers stepped out of the first car. They were not smiling. They had their hands resting on their holsters. In this neighborhood, when an alarm goes off and a window is smashed, they assume the worst. They saw a man in a torn tuxedo holding a weapon, screaming at a woman. "Drop the weapon," one officer shouted. He crouched behind his car door for cover. Hunter looked confused. He looked at the chair leg in his hand. He did not drop it immediately. He pointed it at the officers. "I live here," he screamed over the alarm. "This is my house. Help me turn this damn thing off." "Drop it now," the officer repeated louder this time. He unholstered his weapon. He pointed it directly at Hunter's chest. Jasmine looked up. She saw the gun. She screamed a sound of pure terror. "Hunter, drop it. They will shoot you." Hunter's eyes went wide. He finally realized the gravity of the situation. He dropped the chair leg. It clattered onto the porch. "Get on the ground," the officer commanded. "Hands behind your head, face down." Hunter hesitated. "But I am the owner," he stammered. "I am Hunter Bishop. My father is—" "Get on the ground now, or you will be tased." The officer's voice left no room for negotiation. Hunter fell to his knees. He lay flat on his stomach on the dirty welcome mat. He put his hands behind his head. The arrogance was gone. He was trembling. Jasmine stood up slowly, raising her shaking hands. The officers moved in. One of them kneeled on Hunter's back. I heard the distinct metallic click of handcuffs. "You are making a mistake," Hunter sobbed into the floor mat. "Check the records. This is my house." The officer pulled Hunter up roughly. He marched him toward the patrol car. "We will check the records downtown," the officer said. "Right now you are under arrest for destruction of property and domestic disturbance." Another officer approached Jasmine. "Ma'am, do you have identification proving you reside at this address?" Jasmine shook her head. "My purse is in the car, but we just got married. My husband owns this place." The officer looked at the broken window. He looked at the flashing alarm. He looked at the luxury car parked crookedly. "We received a call from the property owner," the officer said, "a Mr. Quincy Hayes. He stated that the property is currently vacant, and no one has permission to be here." Jasmine's face went pale. She looked at Hunter, who was being shoved into the back of the cruiser. "My father called you," she whispered. The officer nodded. "Yes, ma'am. He said he was watching the security feed. He wants to press charges for the damages." Jasmine looked at the camera mounted above the door. She looked right into the lens. I looked back at her from my screen. She knew. Finally, she knew who held the power. The officer guided her toward the second car. You need to come with us too, ma'am, until we sort this out. I closed the security app. The silence in my living room was beautiful. They had wanted a memorable wedding night. I had just given them one. They would be spending it in a holding cell, surrounded by people who definitely did not care about their aesthetic. I stood up and walked to the kitchen to make a sandwich. The show was over for now, but the lesson was far from finished. The phone in my hand felt heavy, not because of its weight, but because of the sentence I was about to deliver. It was the kind of sentence that cuts ties forever. The caller ID displayed the local police precinct. I took a deep breath. I channeled every ounce of disappointment I had felt over the last 10 years, every sneer Hunter had thrown my way, and every time Jasmine had chosen his arrogance over my dignity. I pressed the answer button. "Mr. Hayes, this is Officer Miller from the Hillcrest precinct." The voice on the other end was professional, but tight with impatience. "We are currently at your property on Oakwood Drive. We have a male and a female subject detained here. They caused a significant disturbance and broke a window. The male subject is screaming that he owns the house and that he is your son-in-law. He claims this is all a misunderstanding with the security system. We need you to verify their identity and their authorization to be on the premises." I paused. I let the silence stretch across the line. I could hear shouting in the background. It was Hunter. He was yelling something about lawyers and lawsuits. I could hear Jasmine sobbing. I closed my eyes. This was the moment. If I said yes, they are family, the police would let them go with a warning. They would sleep in the house. Hunter would win. He would think he could break my windows and disrespect my name and still have a roof over his head. He would never learn. And Jasmine would never see him for what he truly was. "Officer Miller," I said clearly, my voice devoid of hesitation. "I am the sole owner of that property through my holding company. I have no tenants. The house is supposed to be vacant. I do not know who these people are, but if they are claiming to own my property, they are lying. I have not authorized anyone to be there." The officer voice dropped an octave. It became colder. "So you are stating for the record that these individuals are intruders?" "I am stating that they are trespassing," I replied. "And given the damage to the window, I would like them removed from the property immediately. I do not feel safe having strangers trying to break into my assets." "Understood, Mr. Hayes. We will handle it." The line went dead. I did not hang up. I just lowered the phone. I did not feel guilt. I felt the grim satisfaction of a surgeon who has just amputated a gangrenous limb. It was necessary. Back at the house, the atmosphere shifted instantly. I watched it on the security feed before the camera cut out. Officer Miller walked back to the patrol car where Hunter was handcuffed. He did not open the door to let him out. He leaned in and spoke through the window. I do not know exactly what he said, but I saw the color drain from Hunter's face. He stopped screaming. He slumped against the seat. The lie had collapsed. The magic words, "Do you know who I am?" had failed against the hard reality of property law. The officers opened the doors, but not to release them into the house. They pulled them out. They grabbed the handles of the expensive luggage that was still sitting in the driveway. "You need to vacate the premises immediately," Officer Miller barked. "The owner has confirmed you have no right to be here. If you step foot on this driveway again, you will be arrested for criminal trespassing. Move." Hunter stumbled. "But he is lying," he gasped. "He is my father-in-law. Call him back. He is just senile. He is confused." The officer shoved a suitcase into Hunter's chest. "Mr. Hayes sounded very sharp to me, son. Now start walking. You are blocking the roadway." They were forced off the property. The police did not offer them a ride. They were not criminals worth processing, and they were not victims worth helping. They were just a nuisance. The officers got back into their cruisers, turned off the lights, and drove away, leaving them standing on the curb. The silence that followed was heavy. The streetlights of Hillcrest hummed overhead, casting a yellow, artificial glow on the scene. It was a tableau of absolute defeat. Hunter and Jasmine stood on the sidewalk. They were technically on public property now. Behind them, the house stood dark and silent, a fortress they had failed to conquer. In front of them lay the long, empty street. Jasmine looked down at herself. Her $12,000 wedding dress was ruined. The hem was thick with mud and grease from the parking lot. There was a tear in the tool where she had tripped over a curb. She was shivering. The evening air had turned cold, and the adrenaline that had kept her warm was fading, leaving only shock. She looked at the pile of luggage dumped on the grass next to a fire hydrant. It looked like trash, The Louis Vuitton logos seemed to mock them. Just hours ago, they were the golden couple, the envy of their social circle. Now they were homeless vagrants in fancy costumes. Jasmine sat down on the curb. She did not care about the dress anymore. She pulled her knees to her chest. "Where do we go?" she whispered. Her voice was cracked and dry. "We have no car. We have no money. We cannot go back to the hotel. We cannot get into the house. Daddy is not answering." Hunter did not answer. He was pacing back and forth on the sidewalk. His tuxedo jacket was ripped at the shoulder from the struggle with the police. His bow tie was hanging loose around his neck. He looked like a man who had lost a fight with a tiger. He was muttering to himself, kicking at the grass. "This is illegal," he muttered. "He cannot do this. I have rights, squatter's rights, something. I will sue him. I will take everything he has." He stopped pacing and looked at the house. He picked up a rock from the landscaping border. For a second I thought he would throw it, but he dropped it. He had no fight left in him. He looked at Jasmine. He did not look at her with concern. He looked at her with disgust. "This is your fault," he spat. Jasmine looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. "My fault?" she asked. "Hunter, you broke the window. You screamed at the police." Hunter laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I broke the window because your keys did not work," he shouted. His voice echoed down the quiet street. A dog barked in the distance. "Because your father is a psycho. You told me he was a pushover. You told me Quincy would do anything for his little princess. You lied to me, Jasmine." "I did not lie," Jasmine cried. She stood up, her dress rustling around her legs. "I thought he would help. I do not know why he is doing this." "You do not know," Hunter mocked her, mimicking her voice. "You are useless. You know that. Without his money you are nothing. You have no job. You have no talent. You are just a spoiled brat who tricked me into marrying her." Jasmine took a step back. The words hit her harder than the cold. "Tricked you," she said. "Hunter, you told me you loved me. You told me you were a millionaire. You said your crypto business was booming." Hunter's face twisted. It was the face of a man who had been exposed. "I am a visionary," he screamed. "I needed capital. Your father was supposed to be the capital. That was the deal, Jasmine. I bring the class, you bring the cash. That is how it works. But now look at us. We are on the street like bums." He walked toward her. He was looming over her. The street lamp cast his shadow long and distorted across the pavement. "Fix this," he hissed. "Call him again. Beg him. Tell him I am sorry. Tell him I am dying. I do not care. Just get the money." "I cannot," Jasmine sobbed. "He blocked me. He blocked everyone." Hunter stared at her. His chest was heaving. The rage that had been building all day, the humiliation at the resort, the terror of the police, the loss of the Porsche, it all focused on one target. The only target he could reach. He raised his hand. It happened fast, but in the playback of my mind, I saw it in slow motion. Hunter's hand connected with Jasmine's cheek. Slap. The sound was sharp and sickening. It was louder than the sirens. It was the sound of a glass house shattering. Jasmine stumbled back. She did not fall, but she grabbed her face. She looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. She had never been hit before. I had never laid a hand on her. I had raised her to be a queen. And here, on the side of the road, a man she had known for 6 months had just struck her. Hunter looked at his hand. He did not look sorry. He looked justified. "That is for making me look like a fool," he said. His voice was cold, deadly calm. Jasmine stood there, her hand trembling on her cheek. The mark was already starting to form, a red welt on her perfect skin. But something shifted in her eyes. The tears stopped. The panic stopped. It was replaced by shock, the kind of shock that clears the fog. For the first time since she met him, she saw him. She did not see the sharp jawline or the expensive suit. She saw a coward, a man who hits women when he loses, a man who blamed her for his own failures. She looked at the house. She looked at the dark windows where she knew I was somewhere far away, watching. She realized then that the door was not locked to keep her out. It was locked to keep him out. She looked back at Hunter. "You hit me," she whispered. Hunter turned away. He kicked his suitcase. "Shut up, Jasmine. Do not be dramatic. Pick up your bag. We are walking to the gas station to call a cab. If you have any jewelry left, we are pawning it." He started walking down the street, dragging his trunk. He did not look back to see if she was following. He assumed she would. He assumed she was weak. Jasmine stood alone under the street lamp. She looked at his retreating back. She looked at her ring. The diamond that Hunter claimed cost $50,000. She took it off. She looked at the inscription inside. It was not a date, it was a brand name, a cheap brand. She realized the ring was fake, just like him. She dropped the ring into the gutter. It made a tiny plink sound as it fell into the sewer grate. She did not pick up her heavy suitcase. She left it there on the grass. She picked up only her purse. She started walking, but she did not walk after him. She walked in the opposite direction. She walked toward the darkness, toward the unknown. She was cold, she was hurt, and she was homeless. But for the first time in a long time, she was walking away from the poison. I watched the dot on the GPS tracker separate, 2 dots moving in opposite directions. I sat back in my chair. I did not smile. I did not cheer. My heart ached for my daughter. I wanted to run to her. I wanted to wrap her in a blanket and tell her it would be okay. But I stayed in my seat. The lesson was not over. She had walked away from the wolf, but she had not yet learned how to hunt. She needed to survive the night alone. She needed to hit rock bottom before she could rebuild the foundation. I closed the laptop. The house was quiet. Tomorrow would be a new day, and for Jasmine, it would be the first day of her real life. The Motel 6 on the edge of the interstate does not offer turn-down service. It offers neon signs that buzz with the sound of dying flies and carpets that smell of 50 years of bad decisions. This was the honeymoon suite for Mr. and Mrs. Hunter Bishop. I was sitting in my study at home, watching the GPS tracker on Hunter's phone, which was stationary at this sad location, but I did not need a satellite feed to know exactly what was happening inside room 104. I knew because I know men like Hunter. When you strip away the trust fund facade and the leased luxury cars, you are left with a frightened, angry child who lashes out at the nearest soft target. Hunter was lying on the bed, still wearing his tuxedo trousers, but he had ripped the shirt open. He was not drinking Dom Perignon. He was drinking a can of cheap domestic beer that he had bought from the vending machine in the hallway. He had crushed 3 empty cans already, and they sat on the nightstand, leaving wet rings on the cheap wood laminate. He was staring at the ceiling and cursing. He cursed the bank. He cursed the resort manager. But mostly he cursed me. He called me every name in the book. He called me a stingy old man. He called me a thief. He shouted that he was going to sue me for emotional distress and use the settlement money to buy a boat. Jasmine was sitting in the corner of the room on a plastic chair. She had tried to wash the mud off her dress in the tiny bathroom sink, but it had only made a gray smear across the white silk. She was not crying anymore. She was just staring at Hunter. She looked at the man she had promised to love and cherish just 6 hours ago. She saw the way he threw the empty beer can at the wall. She saw the way his face twisted into a sneer when he looked at her. She was waiting for him to apologize. She was waiting for him to say that they would get through this together, because love conquers all. But Hunter did not believe in love. He believed in leverage, and right now he felt he had lost his leverage. He took a swig of beer and burped loudly. He did not say excuse me. He looked at Jasmine and said, "Stop looking at me like that, you useless cow. Call your father again. Tell him if he does not unlock the funds by morning, I am filing for divorce." Jasmine flinched. The word divorce hung in the air, mixed with the smell of stale beer and industrial cleaner. She reached for her phone, not to call me, but just to have something to hold on to. That was the moment I chose to strike. I sat at my mahogany desk, my fingers hovering over the enter key. I had spent the last 5 years as the director of logistics, tracking millions of dollars of cargo across the oceans. I knew how to spot a discrepancy in a manifest. I knew how to find a leak in the supply chain. And for the last 2 years, I had been tracking a leak in my daughter's life. I had not interfered because I needed the evidence to be irrefutable. I needed a mountain of proof so high that even Jasmine blind love could not climb over it. I had compiled a spreadsheet. It was a masterpiece of forensic accounting. It tracked every single withdrawal Hunter had made from their joint account, the account I had seeded with money for their house down payment. Hunter told Jasmine he was investing the money in high-yield crypto markets and aggressive tech startups. He told her he was a visionary day trader. He showed her screenshots of graphs that went up and to the right. But graphs can be photoshopped. Bank statements cannot. I whispered to the empty room, "Check your email, Jasmine." I pressed send. In the motel room, Jasmine's phone chimed. It was the special tone she had set for urgent family notifications. She looked at the screen. The subject line read, The Hunter Bishop Investment Portfolio. She opened it. It was not a graph. It was a PDF file containing 200 pages of transaction logs. I had highlighted the relevant lines in bright yellow. Jasmine zoomed in on the first page. She expected to see transfers to brokerage firms or crypto wallets. Instead, she saw a transfer for $5,000. The recipient was DraftKings online sportsbook. She scrolled down. $3,000 to MGM Grand Casino Las Vegas. $2,000 to a website called Sugar Babies International. Her breath caught in her throat. She scrolled faster. The dates matched the nights Hunter said he was working late at the office. The night he said he was at a networking conference in Miami. There was a $4,000 charge at a gentleman club called the Golden Pole. She looked at the column on the right. I had calculated the total. In 2 years, Hunter had not invested a single dime. He had drained $200,000. $200,000 of my money. $200,000 of Jasmine's future. She felt sick. The numbers were black and white, but the betrayal was technicolor. She saw charges for luxury car rentals he claimed he owned. She saw charges for designer watches he claimed were gifts from clients. It was all a lie, a Ponzi scheme built on one investor, me. She read the note I had attached at the bottom. My dearest Jasmine, the numbers do not lie. He is not a businessman. He is a gambler. And you were not his wife. You were his bankroll. I froze the account today, not to hurt you, but to stop him from spending the last $10 you had to your name. Jasmine lowered the phone. The screen went dark, but the image of the spreadsheet was burned into her retinas. She looked at Hunter. He was crushing the beer can in his hand, squeezing it until the aluminum screamed. He looked small. He looked pathetic. But for the first time, she did not see a victim. She saw a predator. She stood up. The plastic chair scraped loudly against the floor. Hunter looked over. "What are you doing?" he snapped. "Did you call him? Is the money coming?" Jasmine walked over to the bed. She did not tremble. The shock had been replaced by a cold, hard fury, the kind that comes from the Hayes bloodline. She threw the phone at him. It hit him square in the chest. Hunter yelped and grabbed the phone. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted. "You could have cracked the screen." "Read it," Jasmine said. Her voice was low and dangerous. "Read the email, Hunter. Tell me about your investments. Tell me about the crypto market. Tell me about the late nights at the office." Hunter looked at the screen. He saw the spreadsheet. He saw the highlighted charges. He saw the casino names and the betting sites. He did not look ashamed. He did not look guilty. His face shifted into a mask of annoyance. He tossed the phone onto the bedspread. "So what?" he said. His voice was dismissive. "You were snooping. Your father was snooping. That is illegal, you know. Privacy laws." Jasmine felt like she had been slapped again. "Is that all you have to say?" she screamed. "You stole $200,000. You gambled it away. You spent it on strippers. You told me you were building a future for us." Hunter laughed. It was a cruel, dry sound. "Building a future," he mocked. "Jasmine, look at yourself. You really thought I was grinding away at a desk for you. I am an entrepreneur. High risk, high reward. Sometimes you lose. That is the game. And the money was just sitting there. Your dad has millions. He does not even miss it. Why are you acting like I robbed a bank? I just moved some digits around." Jasmine stepped closer. "You lied to me," she hissed. "You lied about everything. You lied about owning the house. You lied about your job. Did you even love me? Or was I just a transaction to you?" Hunter sat up. He swung his legs off the bed. He looked her up and down with eyes that were cold and dead. "Love," he repeated, tasting the word like it was sour milk. "Jasmine, let us be adults here. I loved the lifestyle. I loved that your father is a logistics titan. I loved the idea of never having to work again. And yes, you were part of the package. You are pretty enough. You are obedient enough. Or at least you were until today." He stood up and walked toward the mini fridge to get another beer. "Don't look at me like I am a monster," he said over his shoulder. "I was doing what smart men do. I was leveraging an asset. You are the asset, Jasmine. You were my ticket to the big leagues. But apparently your father is tighter with his wallet than I thought. So here we are, in a Motel 6 drinking swill." He popped the tab on the can. "Fizz. If you want to blame someone, blame him," he said, taking a long sip. "He is the one who cut off the cash flow. If he had just stayed in his lane and signed the checks, we would be in Hawaii right now, sipping Mai Tais. But no, he had to play detective. Jasmine felt the room spinning. The man she had married was gone. In his place stood a stranger who viewed her as a line item on a balance sheet. "You are disgusting," she whispered. Hunter shrugged. "I am realistic. Now sit down and shut up. Tomorrow we are going to find a lawyer, and we are going to sue your father for interfering with marital assets. We are going to get that money back, Jasmine. And you are going to help me, because if you do not, you will be out on the street with nothing, just like me." He turned back to the TV and turned up the volume. I watched the dot on the screen. I saw the pause. Then I saw Jasmine dot move. It moved toward the door. She did not scream. She did not fight. She simply grabbed her purse and walked out into the night, leaving the door wide open. Hunter yelled after her, but he did not chase her. He was too busy drinking his beer. I closed the spreadsheet on my computer. The audit was complete. The asset had been separated from the liability. Now it was time to collect the debt. The neon sign of the Motel 6 buzzed overhead, casting a flickering pink light onto the cracked pavement of the parking lot. Jasmine ran. She did not run with the grace of the debutante I had paid for her to be. She ran with the desperate, stumbling gait of a refugee fleeing a war zone. Her wedding dress, which had cost $12,000, was now a tattered gray rag that tangled around her ankles. She kicked off her heels. She left them right there in the middle of the parking lot next to an oil stain. She ran toward the highway, not knowing where she was going, only knowing that she had to get away from the monster in room 104. The night air was freezing. It bit into her bare arms, and the adrenaline that had fueled her rage was fading, leaving her shaking violently. She reached the edge of the service road. Cars whizzed by on the interstate, their headlights blinding her for a second before leaving her in darkness again. She was alone. For the first time in 26 years, Jasmine Hayes was truly alone. There were no servants. There were no credit cards. There was no husband. She clutched her phone like a lifeline. Her fingers were numb, but she managed to unlock the screen. She went to her favorites list. There was only one number that mattered now. Daddy. She pressed the call button. She pressed it with a force that almost cracked the screen. She held the phone to her ear, praying to hear my voice. She prayed to hear me say, "Hello, princess," in that deep, warm tone I used to use when she scraped her knee. The phone rang. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. Then the voicemail picked up. "You have reached Quincy Hayes. Please leave a message." Jasmine hung up. She dialed again immediately. "Please pick up," she whispered to the empty road. "Please, Daddy, I am sorry. I am so sorry. Just pick up." She walked along the gravel shoulder of the road. The gravel cut into her bare feet, but she did not feel it. She called again, and again, and again. 5 times, 10 times, 20 times. Each time the voicemail picked up, it felt like a door slamming in her face. She started to leave messages. "Daddy, it is me. I left him. You were right. He stole the money. He is a gambler. Please come get me. I am at the Motel 6 off the highway. I have no money. I am scared." She called again. "Daddy, why are you not answering? Please, I am cold. I do not have a jacket. I am sorry about the wedding. I am sorry about what I said. I will pay you back. I swear. Just answer the phone." 50 calls. She made 50 calls in the span of an hour. She sat down on a guardrail, her ruined dress billowing in the wind of the passing trucks. She looked at the phone screen. Battery, 10%. She was watching her lifeline die. She realized then that I was not asleep. I was not busy. I was choosing not to answer. The realization hit her harder than the cold. The father who had never said no, who had never let her fall, was standing back and letting her hit the ground. She pulled her knees to her chest and wept, not for the husband she lost, but for the father she had betrayed. Miles away in my study, the silence was heavy. The only light came from the embers of the fire I had lit earlier that evening. I sat in my leather armchair, a glass of scotch untouched on the side table. My phone sat on the desk. It was vibrating. It had been vibrating for an hour. It danced across the polished wood surface with a low, relentless hum. Bzz, bzz, bzz. Every time it buzzed, I felt a phantom pain in my chest. It was a physical ache. I looked at the screen. Jasmine. Missed call. Jasmine. Missed call. Jasmine. Voicemail. My hand twitched. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to pick it up. I am a father. My biological imperative is to protect. I imagined her alone in the dark. I imagined her crying. I knew she was scared. I had the GPS tracker on her phone open on my laptop screen. I knew exactly where she was. She was sitting on a guardrail near exit 42. I could be there in 20 minutes. I could wrap her in a warm blanket, put her in the heated seat of my car and bring her home. We could drink hot cocoa, and she could cry on my shoulder, and I would fix everything. I would write a check to cover the debts. I would hire the lawyers to handle the divorce. I would make the pain go away. But then I looked at the framed photograph on my desk. It was Esther, my late wife. She was smiling, that knowing smile of hers. I remembered the last conversation we had in the hospital before the cancer took her. She had grabbed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong for a dying woman. "Quincy," she had whispered, "you have to promise me something. When I am gone, do not ruin her." I had been confused. "Ruin her?" I asked. "I would never hurt her, Esther. I love her." "That is the problem, Quincy," Esther said. "You love her too much. You shield her from every raindrop. You pay for every mistake. You are raising a bonsai tree, Quincy, not an oak. You are keeping her small and safe. But the world is not safe. If you keep saving her, she will never learn to save herself. Promise me, Quincy. If she falls, let her bleed a little. It is the only way she will learn to stand up." I looked at the phone buzzing again. Call number 48. Let her bleed a little. I closed my eyes. A tear leaked out and rolled down my cheek. This was the hardest thing I had ever done. Harder than working double shifts on the docks. Harder than burying my wife. I had to kill the protector inside me to save the woman my daughter needed to become. If I picked up the phone now, she would learn nothing. She would learn that she can insult me, banish me, and squander my fortune, and I will still come running the moment she snaps her fingers. She would learn that consequences are for other people. She would go back to being the spoiled child who married a fraud because she did not know the value of a dollar or a character. No, tonight she had to be alone. Tonight she had to feel the cold. Tonight she had to realize that Quincy Hayes is not an ATM machine, but a man with limits. I reached out and turned the phone over, placing it face down. I muted the vibration. The room went silent. I spoke to the empty room. "I am sorry, Jasmine. This is going to hurt you, but it is hurting me more." I took a sip of the scotch. It burned going down. Good. I needed the burn. I needed to stay awake. I had one more move to make before the sun came up. I turned to my laptop. I opened the logistics software for my company. I located the asset list. Asset ID number 4492, Porsche 911 Carrera. Leased under Hayes Logistics Executive Fleet. Assigned driver Hunter Bishop. I checked the status. Payment overdue. Lease agreement violated due to unauthorized use. I clicked the button labeled Initiate Recovery. I typed in the location coordinates from Hunter's phone, which was still at the Motel 6. I sent the order to the repossession team. Priority high. Immediate execution. I sat back. The war was silent, but the casualties were real. I watched the fire die down until it was just ash. I did not sleep that night. I kept vigil over the GPS dot on my screen, making sure she did not move into danger, but refusing to be her savior. The sun rose over the highway with a cruel brightness. It was the kind of morning that hurts your eyes if you haven't slept. At the Motel 6, the light filtered through the thin curtains of room 104, illuminating the wreckage of the night before. Hunter woke up with a pounding headache. His mouth tasted like stale beer and regret. He rolled over, reaching for Jasmine, but the bed was empty. He remembered then. She had left. "Good," he muttered to himself. "Let her go. She will be back when she gets hungry." He sat up and rubbed his face. He felt gross. He needed a shower. He needed a change of clothes. And he needed to get out of this dump. He stood up and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain to check on his car. His Porsche, his pride and joy. The only thing he had left that proved he was somebody. He looked down into the parking lot. His eyes went wide. He blinked, thinking it was a hallucination. A massive tow truck was backed up against the Porsche. A man in coveralls was hooking chains onto the front axle. Hunter screamed, "No! No! No! No!" He scrambled for his pants, tripping over his own feet. He didn't bother with a shirt. He ran out of the room barefoot, sprinting down the exterior hallway and taking the stairs 3 at a time. He burst into the parking lot just as the tow truck driver was hoisting the front of the sports car into the air. "Hey!" Hunter yelled, waving his arms. "Stop! What are you doing? That is my car! Put it down!" The tow truck driver was a large man with a beard and a clipboard. He did not look impressed by the shirtless man screaming at him. He continued to crank the winch. The Porsche tilted upward, looking helpless. Hunter ran up to the driver. "Are you deaf?" he shouted. "I said put it down. I am Hunter Bishop. I will call the police. You are stealing my car." The driver stopped cranking. He turned slowly and looked Hunter up and down. He spat on the ground near Hunter's bare feet. "I am not stealing anything, buddy," the driver said, his voice gravelly. "I have a repossession order here from Hayes Logistics. It says the lease is in default, and the vehicle is to be secured immediately." "Hayes Logistics," Hunter gasped. The name hit him like a physical blow. "Quincy." "No, wait," Hunter stammered. "My father-in-law owns that company. It is a mistake. I am authorized. Just let me call him." The driver laughed. "Yeah, I heard about you. The note on the order says do not accept calls from the driver. It says the driver is no longer an employee or a family member." He handed Hunter a piece of paper. It was a standard repossession notice. At the bottom, in the section for additional comments, there was a typed note. Reason for repossession. Violation of moral clause. Unauthorized driver. Note. Asset is better than the driver. Hunter stared at the paper. His hands were shaking. "You cannot take it," he whispered. "It is all I have. How am I supposed to leave here?" The driver shrugged. "There is a bus stop a mile down the road. Or you can walk. I am just doing my job." He climbed back into the cab of the truck. The engine roared to life, sending a cloud of diesel smoke into Hunter's face. Hunter watched in horror as the truck began to move. His Porsche, his symbol of status, his getaway vehicle, was dragged out of the parking lot. "Wait!" Hunter yelled, running after the truck for a few steps. "Come back!" The truck turned onto the service road and accelerated, merging into traffic. Hunter stood alone in the motel parking lot. He was shirtless, barefoot, and carless. The other motel guests were watching from their windows. A maid pushing a cart stopped and shook her head at him. Hunter looked down at his feet. They were dirty. He looked at the empty parking spot where the Porsche had been. There was just a small oil stain left. He realized then that the war he thought he could win was already over. He had brought a knife to a nuclear fight. Quincy Hayes had not just cut him off. He had erased him. Hunter fell to his knees on the asphalt. He let out a scream of frustration that echoed off the cheap siding of the motel. But nobody came to help. Nobody cared. And miles away, I watched the tracker on the car begin to move back toward the company warehouse. Checkmate. The headquarters of Hayes Logistics is a glass and steel fortress located in the heart of the downtown shipping district. It is a building that demands respect. The floors are polished granite, and the ceilings soar 30 feet high in the lobby. Men and women walk through these doors with purpose. They wear hard hats or business suits, but they all share a common code of conduct, which is discipline. I built this culture. I spent 40 years ensuring that every person who walked through those doors knew they were part of something bigger than themselves. Hunter Bishop did not understand this. To him, a building was just real estate, and people were just servants. He arrived at the main entrance at 10 in the morning. He did not arrive in his Porsche because that car was currently sitting in my impound lot. He arrived on foot, looking disheveled and manic. His tuxedo shirt was stained with sweat and dirt. His hair, usually gelled to perfection, was sticking up in wild tufts. He looked like a man who had walked 5 miles in dress shoes that were 2 sizes too small. I was sitting in my office on the top floor. I have a wall of monitors that allows me to see every corner of my operation. I saw him approach the revolving doors. He pushed through them with aggressive force, almost knocking over a young female intern carrying a stack of files. He did not apologize. He marched straight to the front desk. The receptionist was a woman named Sarah. She has been with the company for 15 years. She is kind and she is efficient. I watched on the screen as Hunter slammed his hand down on her marble desk. I could not hear the audio from the lobby yet, but I could read his body language perfectly. He was leaning over her, invading her personal space. He was pointing a finger in her face. Sarah recoiled slightly, but she held her ground. She picked up her phone, probably to call security. Hunter reached out and slammed the receiver down. That was his first mistake. You do not touch the equipment at Hayes Logistics. I unmuted the audio feed. Hunter's voice filled my office. It was shrill and desperate. "I do not need an appointment," he screamed. "I am family. Do you understand English? I am Quincy Hayes' son-in-law. Get him down here right now. I know he is up there. Tell him Hunter is here and I am not leaving until I get my car back." Sarah remained calm. She said, "Sir, I cannot let you up without a pass. Mr. Hayes is in a meeting. If you would like to wait in the seating area, I can send a message up." Hunter laughed. It was a sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Wait," he mocked. "Do I look like someone who waits? I am not one of your truck drivers. I am a partner in this family. Now call him, or I will jump over this desk and call him myself." I leaned forward in my chair. He had just threatened an employee. He had just threatened the sanctity of my workplace. This was no longer a family dispute. This was a security breach. I picked up my radio. I did not call the police. I called Marcus. Marcus is the head of building security. He stands 6 feet 5 inches tall and weighs 250 pounds of solid muscle. He is a former Marine and a man of immense character. I hired him 10 years ago when he was struggling to find work after his tour of duty. He is loyal to a fault. I spoke into the radio. "Marcus, we have a situation at the front desk. Code orange. Remove the individual, but do not hurt him. Not yet." I watched on the screen as Marcus emerged from the security office. He moved with the quiet grace of a predator. He was flanked by 2 other officers. They approached Hunter from behind. Hunter was still screaming at Sarah. He did not hear them coming. Marcus placed a heavy hand on Hunter's shoulder. "Sir," Marcus said in his deep baritone voice, "you are disturbing the peace. I need to ask you to lower your voice and step away from the desk." Hunter spun around. He looked up at Marcus. He had to look way up. For a second, I thought fear would sober him up. I thought the sheer physical dominance of Marcus would make Hunter realize he was out of his depth. But arrogance is a powerful drug. Hunter swatted Marcus' hand away. "Do not touch me," Hunter hissed. "Do not you dare touch me with those hands. Do you know who I am?" Marcus did not flinch. He did not blink. He simply clasped his hands behind his back and stood his ground. "I know who you are, sir," Marcus replied calmly. "You are a trespasser, and you have 10 seconds to leave the building voluntarily before we assist you." Hunter's face turned purple. He looked around the lobby. Employees were stopping to watch. Couriers were pausing mid-stride. Hunter felt the eyes on him. He felt the judgment. And instead of retreating, he lashed out. He went for the only weapon he thought he had, his perceived superiority. He stepped closer to Marcus. He poked Marcus in the chest with a trembling finger. "You are nothing," he spat. "You are just a rent-a-cop in a cheap uniform. You people are all the same. You think because Quincy gave you a job you have power. You have no power. You exist to serve people like me. I am the one who belongs in the penthouse. You belong at the door, opening it for me." The lobby went silent. It was a silence so profound you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Hunter had not just insulted Marcus. He had insulted every single person in that building who worked for a living. He had insulted the very foundation of what we stood for. Marcus' jaw tightened. I saw the muscle twitch, but he kept his discipline. "Sir," he said softly, his voice dangerous, "I am asking you one last time. Leave." Hunter laughed. "Or what? You going to arrest me? You are afraid of me. You are afraid because I am white, and I am rich, and I am family. Now get out of my way, boy, and go get my father-in-law." Boy. He used the word. He used the word that carries centuries of pain and oppression. He threw it in the face of a man who had served his country. That was the line. There was no going back from that. I sat in my office, and I felt a cold rage that was entirely different from the anger I felt about the money. The money was just paper. This was dignity. Hunter had walked into my house and tried to burn it down with hate. I reached for the control panel on my desk. I have a master override for the building public address system. It allows me to broadcast to every floor, every office, and every warehouse bay. I pressed the button. The microphone hummed to life. I watched Hunter on the screen. He was smirking, thinking he had won because Marcus had not hit him. He did not know that the only reason he was still standing was because Marcus respected me too much to make a mess in my lobby. I leaned into the microphone. "Hunter Bishop." My voice boomed through the lobby. It echoed off the marble walls. It was loud, clear, and inescapable. It sounded like the voice of judgment itself. Hunter jumped. He looked up at the ceiling, looking for the source of the sound. I continued speaking. My voice was calm, but it carried the weight of 40 years of authority. "You came here demanding to see me. You came here claiming to be family. But family does not disrespect the people who work to put food on the table. Family does not judge a man by the color of his skin or the uniform he wears." Hunter started shouting at the ceiling. "Quincy, come down here and face me like a man. Stop hiding behind a speaker." I ignored him. I pressed another button on my console. "I want everyone in this building to know exactly who is standing in our lobby," I said. "I want you to hear the man who thinks he is better than you." I played the recording. It was the recording from the wedding, the conversation I had captured yesterday in the resort suite. The audio blasted through the speakers. It was crystal clear. Hunter's voice filled the building. "Quincy is just labor money. There is a smell to it. You milk the cow. You do not invite him to dinner." Then I played the clip from 10 seconds ago, the security feed audio buffer. "You people are all the same. You exist to serve people like me. Get out of my way, boy." The recording ended. The echo faded. The reaction in the lobby was immediate. The employees who had been watching with curiosity were now looking at Hunter with pure, unadulterated disgust. The secretaries, the janitors, the executives, the couriers, they all stared at him. It was a wall of eyes, a wall of judgment. Hunter shrank. He looked around wildly. He realized suddenly that he was surrounded. He was not in a country club. He was in a house of labor, and he had just insulted the workers. I spoke one last time into the microphone. "Marcus." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, looking up at the camera. "Take out the trash." Marcus smiled. It was a smile that did not reach his eyes. He stepped forward. He did not ask this time. He reached out and grabbed Hunter by the back of his collar and the seat of his pants. Hunter screamed. "Get your hands off me. This is assault. I will sue you." Marcus lifted him. He lifted him off the ground like he was a rag doll. Hunter's legs kicked uselessly in the air. The two other officers stepped in to open the double-glass doors. Marcus marched Hunter across the lobby. The employees parted like the Red Sea. No one said a word. No one tried to help. Some even took out their phones to film it. Hunter was screaming profanities, flailing his arms, but he was powerless against the strength of a man who knew his worth. Marcus reached the curb. He swung Hunter forward and released him. Hunter flew through the air. He landed hard on the concrete sidewalk. He rolled, tearing his tuxedo pants at the knee. He scrambled to get up, looking back at the glass doors. Marcus stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. He dusted off his hands. "Do not come back, sir," Marcus said. "Next time, we will not be so gentle." The doors slid shut. The lock clicked. I watched from my office window. Hunter stood on the sidewalk alone. People passing by on the street steered clear of him, thinking he was a crazy person. He shouted at the building one last time, shaking his fist. But his voice was lost in the wind. He had lost his car. He had lost his money. And now he had lost the last shred of his social standing. Every person in that building would tell the story. By tonight, the whole city would know that Hunter Bishop was not just a broke fraud, but a racist coward. I turned off the microphone. I sat back in my chair. I picked up the phone and dialed the front desk. "Sarah?" I said. "Yes, Mr. Hayes," she answered, her voice shaking slightly. "Give Marcus and his team a $5,000 bonus. And take the rest of the day off, Sarah. You handled that beautifully." "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," she whispered. I hung up. I looked down at the street one last time. Hunter was walking away, limping slightly. He was heading toward the bus stop. The world was finally correcting itself. The balance was returning. But there was still one loose end, one person who needed to find her way home. I looked at the GPS tracker on the other screen. Jasmine. She was still at the motel, but she was moving. It was time for the final lesson. The smell of industrial detergent is not something my daughter Jasmine was familiar with. For 26 years, her clothes simply appeared in her closet, clean and pressed, smelling of lavender sachets and expensive fabric softener. She never thought about the hands that scrubbed the stains or the backs that bent to fold the sheets. But hunger is a powerful teacher. It reshapes your reality in a matter of hours. Jasmine had not eaten a proper meal in 2 days. She had slept on a park bench, wrapped in a discarded coat she found near a dumpster. Her stomach was not just growling, it was screaming. She walked past a bakery, and the scent of bread almost brought her to her knees. But she had no money, not a single cent. She realized she could not beg. The Hayes' pride, even buried under layers of dirt and humiliation, would not let her hold out a cup. She had to earn it. She walked into a small laundromat on the corner of 4th and Main. It was a place called Suds and Duds. It was hot inside. The air was thick with humidity and the chemical tang of bleach. The machines rumbled like angry beasts shaking the floor. Behind the counter stood a woman named Betty. Betty was 60 years old with arms like tree trunks and a face that had seen every kind of hardship the city could offer. Jasmine approached the counter. She looked like a ghost. Her hair was matted and her eyes were hollow. "I need work," Jasmine whispered. Her voice was raspy from dehydration. "I will do anything. I just need money for food." Betty looked her up and down. She saw the remnants of the manicure. She saw the quality of the purse Jasmine was clutching. She sniffed. "We do not need help," Betty said, turning back to a pile of towels. "Please," Jasmine begged. "I am strong. I can fold. I can clean the floors. Just $10, please." Betty paused. She looked at Jasmine's hands. They were soft, uncalloused hands, hands that had never held anything heavier than a champagne flute. "There is a pile of grease rags from the mechanic shop next door," Betty said, pointing to a mountain of filthy black fabric in the corner. "The machines cannot get them clean enough. They need to be scrubbed by hand before they go in the wash. It is nasty work. $5 an hour." "I will do it," Jasmine said immediately. Betty handed her a bucket of harsh soap and a stiff bristle brush. There were no gloves. Jasmine sat on a plastic crate in the back of the laundromat. She plunged her hands into the scalding water. The soap stung her skin. The grease smelled of old oil and gasoline. She started to scrub. Back and forth, back and forth. Within 20 minutes, her knuckles were raw. Within an hour, blisters had formed on her palms and burst. Her shoulders ached with a fire she had never known. But she did not stop. She scrubbed until the water turned black, and then she got fresh water and scrubbed again. For 4 hours she worked. She watched the black grease disappear from the rags, revealing the gray fabric beneath. It was the first time in her life she had physically transformed something with her own effort. When she finished, she stood up. Her back cracked. Her hands were red and shaking. She walked to the counter. Betty looked at the pile of clean rags. She nodded. "Not bad, princess." Betty opened the register and took out 2 $10 bills. She handed them to Jasmine. Jasmine took the money. She stared at the bills. $20. It was not enough to buy an appetizer at the restaurants she used to frequent with Hunter. But right now, it felt like $1 million. It felt heavy. It felt real. It was the first money she had ever truly owned, because she had traded her sweat for it. She held the bills to her chest and closed her eyes, fighting back tears of exhaustion and strange pride. I was sitting in my office miles away, but I was right there with her. I have known Betty for 30 years. We grew up on the same block. I helped Betty with the lease for her shop when the landlord tried to evict her. I called her that morning. I told her that a girl might come in looking for work. I told her to be hard on her, but to give her a chance. I had the security feed from the laundromat streaming on my second monitor. The camera angle was high and grainy and black and white, but I could see everything. I saw my daughter sitting on that crate. I saw the way she winced when the hot water hit her blistered hands. I saw the way she wiped sweat from her forehead with her forearm, leaving a streak of grease across her face. It was painful to watch. Every instinct in my body wanted to drive down there and pull her out of that heat. I wanted to tell her that she was an heiress, that she did not need to scrub rags for strangers. I gripped the arms of my leather chair so hard the leather creaked. I poured myself a glass of water, but I could not drink it. My throat was tight. But then I saw something that made me stay in my seat. I saw Jasmine stop scrubbing for a moment. She looked at her hands. She was crying. Her shoulders were shaking with silent sobs. She looked ready to quit. She looked ready to walk out the door and surrender. But she did not. She took a deep breath. I saw her chest rise and fall on the screen. She wiped her eyes fiercely. She set her jaw. It was the same look Esther used to have when the bills were piling up, and we were working double shifts. It was the look of determination. Jasmine plunged her hands back into the water and scrubbed harder. I smiled. A single tear rolled down my own cheek. "She is still in there," I whispered to the screen. "The haze spirit is still in there." I zoomed in on the image. She was not just cleaning rags. She was scrubbing away the entitlement. She was scrubbing away the dependency. She was learning the lesson that cannot be taught in a lecture hall or a boardroom. She was learning that survival is not a gift, it is a wage. Betty walked past the camera and looked up at the lens, giving me a subtle nod. She knew I was watching. She knew this was necessary. I watched Jasmine finish the job. I watched her take the money. I saw the way she looked at that $20. She looked at it with more respect than she had ever looked at my credit card. She walked over to the vending machine in the corner. She bought a bottle of water and a bag of peanuts. She sat down on the floor to eat. It was a humble meal, a meal of poverty, but she ate it with dignity. I was about to close the feed, feeling a sense of relief, when the bell above the door jingled. I looked at the entrance on the screen. My relief vanished, instantly replaced by a cold, sharp dread. A figure walked in. He was wearing a hooded sweatshirt pulled low over his face, but I recognized the walk. I recognized the swagger of a coward who thinks he has found a victim. It was Hunter. He must have been following her, or maybe he knew she had no place else to go. He scanned the room. His eyes locked on Jasmine sitting in the corner. He did not look happy to see her. He looked malicious. Jasmine looked up. She dropped the bag of peanuts. She scrambled to her feet, pressing her back against the wall. I reached for my phone to call the police, but I stopped. I needed to see what she would do. I needed to see if she would run to him or stand her ground. Hunter walked across the laundromat floor, his shoes squeaking on the linoleum. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot and he hadn't shaved. But he still had that sneer, that look of unearned superiority. He stopped 3 feet from her. He did not hug her. He did not ask if she was okay. "Look at you," he sneered, his voice picked up by the security microphone. "You look like trash, scrubbing floors. Is this what you are reduced to, without daddy money?" Jasmine wiped her hands on her dirty dress. "What do you want, Hunter?" she asked. Her voice was shaking, but she did not look down. "I want out," Hunter hissed. "I want to leave this town. I need a plane ticket, and I need startup cash. And you were going to get it for me." "I have $20, Jasmine said, holding up the bills. "Take it and leave me alone." Hunter laughed. He slapped the money out of her hand. The bills fluttered to the wet floor. "I do not want your chump change," he spat. "I want $1 million. I want what I was promised when I married you." "I cannot give you that," Jasmine said. "You know I cannot. My father froze everything." Hunter pulled out his phone. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. He held the screen up to her face. "I know he froze the accounts," Hunter said, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "But he cares about his reputation. He cares about the family name. And I bet he cares about his little princess dignity." Jasmine looked at the screen. Her eyes went wide with horror. She gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. I recognized the images reflected in her eyes. They were private photos, intimate photos. Photos that a husband takes of his wife in moments of trust. Photos that were never meant to be seen by anyone else. Hunter swiped through them. Click, click, click. "If I do not get $1 million in cash by tomorrow noon," Hunter threatened. "These go online. I will send them to every fashion blog, every gossip site, and every business associate of your father. I will ruin you, Jasmine. I will make sure you cannot show your face in this country again." Jasmine began to shake. "Please, Hunter," she begged. "You cannot do that. That is illegal. That is revenge porn. You will go to jail." Hunter shrugged. "I am already broke. I have nothing to lose." "But you do. You have everything to lose." He grabbed her arm. His fingers dug into her bruised flesh. "Call him," he ordered. "Tell him to unlock the funds. Tell him it is a ransom, because that is exactly what this is." Jasmine looked at him. She looked at the man she thought was her soulmate. She saw the monster beneath the skin. She pulled her arm away. "I will not call him," she whispered. Hunter leaned in, his breath smelling of stale alcohol. "Then get ready to be famous," he said. "You have until noon." He turned and walked out the door, the bell jingling cheerfully behind him. Jasmine slid down the wall until she hit the floor. She buried her face in her grease-stained hands. I stared at the screen. My blood was boiling. It was a cold, calculated rage. Hunter had crossed the final line. He was not just a thief anymore. He was a blackmailer. He was a predator threatening my child. I reached for my phone. I dialed a number I had not used in years. It was not the police. It was my lawyer, Abernathy. Abernathy, I said, my voice low and steady. Get the FBI on the line. And get the jet ready. We have a situation. The game had changed. Hunter wanted a ransom. I was going to give him a trap. The doorbell rang at midnight. It was not the polite chime of a guest, but a frantic, continuous pressing that echoed through the silent house like a fire alarm. I was sitting in my study with the lights off, watching the embers of the fireplace die down. I knew who it was. I had watched her walk 5 miles from the laundromat to my front gate. I had watched her hesitate at the keypad before punching in the code I had not changed for her. I stood up and walked to the heavy oak door. I did not hurry. I needed to see if she was ready. I opened the door. The sight that greeted me would have broken a weaker man. Jasmine was kneeling on the welcome mat. She was covered in grease and sweat. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and her feet were bleeding inside her cheap sneakers. She was shivering violently, but when she looked up at me, her eyes were different. The entitlement was gone. The arrogance was gone. In their place was a raw, terrified vulnerability. She did not ask for money. She did not ask for her credit cards. She reached out and grabbed the hem of my trousers with her dirty hands. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please do not give him the money. Do not give him a single cent. He does not deserve your hard work." I looked down at her. This was the first time in her life she had tried to protect my assets instead of spending them. "Then why are you here, Jasmine?" I asked, my voice stern. She began to sob. "Because he is going to destroy me. He has photos, Daddy. Private photos. He said he will put them on the internet if I do not get him $1 million by noon. I do not care about the poverty. I can scrub floors. I can live in a shelter. But please help me save my name. I cannot live with that shame. I cannot let him strip me of my dignity." She bowed her head, touching her forehead to the cold stone of the porch. I felt a fire ignite in my chest. It was not the slow burn of disappointment I had felt before. It was the white-hot rage of a father whose child is being hunted. Hunter had made a fatal error. He thought he was playing a game of leverage. He did not realize he had just committed a federal crime. He had moved from a squabble over money to extortion and blackmail. I reached down and placed my hand on her head. Her hair was matted, but, to me, she was still my little girl. "Get up, Jasmine," I said softly. "Come inside. The lesson is over. Now the war begins." I led her into the study. I put a blanket around her shoulders and poured her a glass of water. She drank it in one gulp. Her hands were shaking so hard the glass clicked against her teeth. I sat behind my desk. I did not open my checkbook. I opened my contact list. I dialed a number that very few people have. It belongs to Saul Abernathy. Saul is not just my corporate lawyer. He is a shark in a 3-piece suit. He has friends in high places, including the local field office of the FBI. Saul answered on the first ring. He knows I do not call at midnight for social reasons. "Quincy," he said, his voice raspy with sleep but alert. "What is wrong?" "We have a situation, Saul," I said. "My son-in-law has just demanded $1 million in exchange for not releasing compromising materials of my daughter. He has threatened to ruin her reputation globally." There was a silence on the line. I could hear Saul shifting in bed. "That is extortion, Quincy," Saul said. "That is a felony. If he sent the threat electronically, it is a federal offense. Do you have proof?" I looked at Jasmine. She nodded. She pulled out her phone and showed me the text messages Hunter had sent after he left the laundromat. They were vile. They detailed exactly what he would do and where he would send the images. "I have the texts, Saul," I said. "Good," Saul replied. "Do not delete them. I am calling Agent Miller right now. We are going to set up a sting. Does Hunter know you are involved yet?" "No," I said. "He thinks he broke her. He thinks she is coming to me to beg for the cash." "Perfect," Saul said. "Let him believe he has won. We need to catch him in the act of accepting the payment. We need him to verbally confirm the blackmail when the money changes hands. Can Jasmine handle that?" I looked at my daughter. She was huddled in the blanket, looking small and broken. "Jasmine," I said, covering the phone. "We are going to catch him, but you have to be strong. You have to meet him. You have to lie to him. Can you do that?" Jasmine looked at the fireplace. She saw the reflection of her ruined face in the glass doors. She tightened her jaw. "I will do it," she whispered. I want to see him fall. I spoke back into the phone. She is ready, Saul. Set it up. For the next hour, my study became a command center. Jasmine sat in the leather chair while I paced the room instructing her. We went over the script. She had to sound defeated. She had to sound like the spoiled heiress giving in to the demands. If she sounded too confident, he would get suspicious. You have to feed his ego, I told her. You have to make him feel like the smartest man in the room. Men like Hunter are blinded by their own arrogance. If you flatter him, he will not look for the trap. Jasmine nodded. She practiced the lines. Daddy agreed to pay. He is scared of the scandal. He will have the cash. I handed her a burner phone Saul had sent over with a courier years ago for emergencies. Use this, I said. Text him. Tell him the deal is on. Jasmine's hands trembled as she typed. I watched her face. It was hardening. The soft edges of her youth were turning into the sharp angles of a woman who has survived a betrayal. She pressed send. Now we wait, I said. The reply came 2 minutes later. I knew the old man would fold. Meet me at the Blackwood Cafe at 10. Come alone. If I see a cop, I upload the photos. Bring the cash in a gym bag. I smiled a cold, humorless smile. The Blackwood Cafe was perfect. It had large windows and limited exits. I looked at Jasmine. Go upstairs and shower. Put on one of your old dresses. You need to look like the Jasmine he remembers, the Jasmine he thinks he owns. She stood up and let the blanket fall. I am not that Jasmine anymore, she said. I know, I replied. That is why we are going to win. The next morning the sun was bright, but the air was crisp. I sat in the back of an unmarked van parked 2 blocks away from the cafe. Next to me sat Agent Miller, wearing headphones. On the screen in front of us, we had a live feed from the button camera concealed on Jasmine's coat. I watched my daughter walk down the street. She was carrying a heavy black duffel bag. Inside the bag was not $1 million. It was filled with cut-up newspaper and a layer of real $100 bills on top. She looked terrified, which was perfect. She entered the cafe. It was quiet. Hunter was sitting in a booth in the back wearing sunglasses indoors. He looked like a celebrity in his own mind. He was sipping an espresso, his foot tapping impatiently. Jasmine approached the table. You are late, Hunter snapped, checking his watch. I had to get the cash, Jasmine whispered, placing the bag on the table with a heavy thud. It is heavy. Hunter's eyes lit up. He reached for the zipper. Not here, Jasmine said, putting her hand over his. People are watching. Hunter laughed. You are paranoid, just like your father. He pulled her hand away. He unzipped the bag just enough to see the stacks of bills. He saw the green. He saw a Benjamin Franklin face. He zipped it back up with a grin that made my stomach turn. See, he said, leaning back. Was that so hard? All you had to do was listen to me. I want the phone, Jasmine said, her voice trembling just the right amount. You promised. Delete the photos. Give me the phone. Hunter pulled his phone out of his pocket. He held it up, taunting her. I will delete them later, he said, once I count the money. I need to make sure your daddy did not shortchange me. No, Jasmine said, standing up. That was not the deal. You are extorting me, Hunter. You are blackmailing me for $1 million. Admit it. Hunter laughed loud enough for the microphone to pick it up clearly. Call it what you want, princess, he sneered. Extortion. Smart business. The point is, I won. I have the money, and I own you. Now sit down and order me a coffee. I looked at Agent Miller. He nodded. That is a confession, Miller said into his radio. We have confirmation. Move in. I watched on the screen as the customers at the tables around Hunter suddenly stopped eating. The man reading the newspaper put it down. The woman drinking tea stood up. They were not customers. Hunter looked around, confused. The man with the newspaper pulled out a badge. FBI, he shouted. Hunter Bishop, put your hands on the table. Hunter's face went white. He grabbed the bag. He tried to slide out of the booth. Sit down, the agent commanded, drawing his weapon. Hunter froze. He looked at Jasmine. You set me up, he screamed. You witch! Jasmine stood there. She did not flinch. She looked down at him with eyes that were clear and dry. I did not set you up, Hunter, she said calmly. I just let you be yourself. The agents grabbed Hunter. They slammed him onto the table. The coffee cup shattered. The duffel bag fell to the floor, spilling the newspaper bundles. Hunter saw the paper. He He saw the fake money. He screamed a sound of pure, primal rage. I opened the door of the van. "It is time to go say hello," I said to Agent Miller. I walked down the street toward the cafe. I walked with my head high. The trap had snapped shut, the rat was caught, and my daughter was finally free. The interior of the surveillance van smelled of stale coffee and high-tension electronics. I sat next to Agent Miller, my eyes glued to the small, high-definition monitor that showed the grainy interior of the Blackwood Cafe. Through the hidden camera button on Jasmine's coat, I had a front-row seat to the arrogance of a man who thought he was invincible. Hunter was leaning back in the booth. He looked terrible physically, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous tick in his jaw, but his ego was untouched. He was drumming his fingers on the table, a rhythm of impatience and greed. Jasmine sat across from him. She was perfect. She sat with her shoulders hunched, making herself look smaller, making herself look defeated. She was playing the role of the broken heiress, exactly as we had rehearsed. I watched as Hunter took a sip of his espresso and sneered. "You look pathetic, Jasmine," he said, his voice clear in my headset. "I told you this would happen. I told you that without me guiding you, the Hayes family would crumble. You people have money, but you do not have vision." Jasmine kept her head down. "I just want this to be over, Hunter," she whispered. "Do you promise to delete everything?" Hunter laughed. It was a cruel sound. "I will delete it when I feel safe," he said. "You know what is funny, Jasmine? Your father thinks he is so smart. He thinks because he moved some shipping containers around for 40 years, he understands how the world works. But he is a dinosaur. He does not understand leverage. He does not understand that in the modern world, you do not need to work hard. You just need to be smarter than the person sitting across from you." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that the microphone picked up perfectly. "Do you know how I drained those accounts without him noticing? For 2 years, he bragged. I created shell companies, Jasmine, dummy corporations. I funneled the cash into offshore crypto wallets that the IRS cannot touch. I have been living tax-free while your dad pays his dues like a good little citizen. That is the difference between us. He follows the rules, and I rewrite them. I am the future. He is just history." I looked at Agent Miller. He was typing furiously on his laptop, logging every word. That was a confession to wire fraud and tax evasion right there on tape. Hunter was digging his own grave with his mouth. He continued, "And do not think I feel bad about it. I deserve that money. I had to put up with you and your embarrassing family for 6 months. I had to pretend to respect a man who should be carrying my luggage. It was work, Jasmine, and today is payday." My blood boiled, but I kept my breathing steady. He had just admitted that the marriage was a fraud. He had admitted the tax evasion. He had admitted the racism. He had given us everything we needed to put him away for a decade. Jasmine reached down and lifted the heavy black duffel bag onto the seat next to her. The sound of the bag hitting the vinyl booth was heavy and solid. "Here is the $1 million, she said, her voice shaking. "It is all in cash, just like you asked. Daddy liquidated his emergency assets. He does not want a scandal." Hunter's eyes widened. He licked his lips. The sight of the bag made him forget everything else. The greed took over completely. "Show me," he demanded. Jasmine unzipped the bag just an inch. Inside, the top layer of crisp $100 bills was visible. I had withdrawn $10,000 of real money to create the illusion. Beneath that layer was nothing but cut-up newspaper and phone books. Hunter reached out to touch the money. "Don't," Jasmine said, pulling the bag back. "Delete the photos first." Hunter scoffed. "Fine. You are so annoying." He pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times. "There," he said, showing her the screen. "Deleted from the cloud. Deleted from the device. Are you happy now?" Jasmine looked at the phone. She knew the tech team back in the van had already mirrored his device and secured the evidence, but she nodded. "Thank you," she said. She pushed the heavy bag across the table. It slid over the formica surface with a scraping sound. Hunter grabbed the handles. He pulled the bag toward him possessively. He looked like a child claiming a prize. Finally, he breathed. He looked at Jasmine with a look of pure triumph. "You know," he said, his hand resting on the bag, "I might actually miss you, Jasmine. You were easy to manipulate. Maybe when I spend all this, I will come back and we can do this again." Jasmine looked him dead in the eye. The fear dropped from her face like a mask falling away. She sat up straight. She squared her shoulders. "There will not be a next time, Hunter. she said clearly. Hunter frowned. What did you say? I said I am done being manipulated, Jasmine replied. And you are done being free. Hunter looked confused. He started to unzip the bag, fully wanting to count his winnings. He pulled the zipper all the way back. He reached in and grabbed a handful of cash. But when he pulled it out, the top layer of bills fell away, revealing the gray newsprint underneath. He stared at the handful of shredded paper. He stared at the bag filled with garbage. What is this? He stammered. What is this? I pressed the button on my microphone. It is called a refund, Hunter, I said into his ear through the hidden earpiece Jasmine had dropped in the sugar bowl. Hunter jumped, looking around wildly. Now, Agent Miller commanded. The diner exploded into action. The couple sitting 2 tables away threw off their coats, revealing FBI windbreakers. The barista vaulted over the counter with a weapon drawn. The front door burst open, and a tactical team flooded the small space. FBI! Freeze! Everyone screamed. Hunter scrambled backward, trying to climb out of the booth. He knocked the table over, sending the bag of fake money spilling onto the floor. Paper bills and newspaper clippings fluttered through the air like confetti at a twisted parade. He was screaming. No, you cannot do this. I have rights. This is entrapment. 2 agents grabbed him. They slammed him face down onto the sticky floor of the cafe. I heard the wind get knocked out of him. Do not resist, one agent shouted, pulling Hunter's arms behind his back. Hunter was thrashing like a fish on a deck. I did nothing wrong. That is my money. They stole my money. I stepped out of the van. I adjusted my suit jacket. I checked my tie in the side mirror. I wanted to look impeccable. I walked down the block toward the cafe. The morning air felt clean. I entered the cafe. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully, a stark contrast to the scene inside. Hunter was pinned to the floor, his face pressed against the linoleum, right next to a pile of the shredded newspaper. He looked up and saw me. "Quincy," he screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. Tell them it was a loan. Tell them we were just joking. Help me, we are family." I walked over to him. I stopped right in front of his face. I looked down at him. I did not look angry. I looked disappointed. I signaled for the agents to lift him up. They hauled him to his knees. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. I leaned down and wiped a smudge of dirt off his cheek. "We are not family, Hunter," I said, my voice calm and filling the silent room. "Family is built on blood and loyalty. You have neither." Hunter began to cry, real ugly tears. "But I am better than this," he sobbed. "I am a bishop. I have class. You cannot send me to jail with these animals." I laughed softly. "Class," one repeated. I pointed to Jasmine, who was standing by the window looking strong and beautiful in her simple dress. "Class is not about the car you drive or the suit you steal," I said. "Class is about dignity. Class is about knowing that you do not have to step on others to stand tall." I leaned in closer so only he could hear me. "You called me labor money, Hunter. You were right. I labored for 40 years to build a legacy, and today I use that labor money to buy the best lawyers and the best investigators to take you down." I stood up and nodded to Agent Miller. "Get this trash out of my sight," I said. "It is cluttering up the room." The agents dragged him out. He was screaming my name, screaming Jasmine's name, screaming that he was innocent. But nobody was listening. I turned to my daughter. She was trembling not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. I opened my arms. She ran to me. She buried her face in my chest and sobbed. I held her tight. I held her until the shaking stopped. "It is over, baby girl," I whispered. "It is finally over." I looked out the window. The police car was pulling away with Hunter in the back. I had lost a son-in-law, but I had got my daughter back, and that was a trade I would make any day of the week. The fluorescent lights of the police precinct hummed with a low, aggressive buzz that seemed to drill into my skull. I sat on a hard metal bench in the hallway, watching through the glass partition as Jasmine finished giving her statement. She looked exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the sting operation at the cafe had evaporated, leaving behind a pale, trembling young woman in a dirty dress. But her hand was steady as she signed the bottom of the affidavit. That signature was the final nail in the coffin of her marriage. It was the legal acknowledgement that her husband was a criminal who had tried to destroy her life for a payday. Down the hall in the holding cells, I could hear him. Hunter Bishop was not going quietly. His voice echoed off the concrete walls, muffled by heavy steel doors, but still audible. He was screaming about his rights. He was screaming about calling his father, who had likely already blocked his number. He was screaming that he was a victim of entrapment. Every time he yelled, a passing officer would roll his eyes. They had seen men like Hunter before, men who thought the world owed them everything, and threw a tantrum when the bill finally came due. Agent Miller walked out of the interrogation room. He shook my hand. "We have everything we need, Mr. Hayes," he said. "The recording is clear. The text messages are preserved, and we found the digital copies of the photos on a cloud server he thought he had scrubbed. They are secured and deleted from the public web. Your daughter is safe." "Thank you, Agent Miller," I said. "I appreciate your discretion." He nodded at Jasmine. "She is tough. She held it together in there. Most people would have folded under that kind of pressure." "She is a Hayes," I said quietly. "It just took her a while to remember it." I walked into the room. Jasmine looked up. She did not smile. She stood up slowly, clutching her purse. "Is he gone?" she asked. "He is not gone," I said. "He is processed. He will be arraigned tomorrow morning. With the extortion charges and the flight risk, he will not be getting bail anytime soon. You do not have to worry about him anymore." She nodded, but her eyes were distant. She was not thinking about the legal victory. She was thinking about the betrayal. The man she had slept beside, the man she had promised her life to, had looked her in the eye and sold her out for a bag of paper. "Let us go home," I said. The drive back to my estate was silent. Jasmine stared out the window, watching the city lights blur into the dark trees of the suburbs. I did not turn on the radio. I let the silence do the work. We pulled into the driveway. The house looked different tonight. It was no longer a fortress locking her out. It was a sanctuary welcoming her back. But it was a sanctuary with rules. We walked into the kitchen. I turned on the warm overhead lights. Jasmine sat at the island, the same spot where she used to sit and do her homework when she was a little girl. I poured 2 glasses of water. I placed one in front of her. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I placed it on the marble counter between us. The screen was black. I tapped it. The notification list lit up. 120 missed calls. Jasmine looked at the phone. She flinched as if it had burned her. She recognized the number. It was hers. "You saw them," she whispered. Her voice was thick with hurt. "You saw every single one." "I did," I replied. I sat in my study and I watched the phone light up 120 times. I heard every voicemail. I heard you crying. I heard you begging. I heard you wandering on the highway in the dark. "Then why?" she asked, tears spilling over her lashes. "Why didn't you answer?" "I was scared, Daddy. I thought you had abandoned me. I thought you hated me." I pulled up a stool and sat across from her. I looked at her hands. They were still red and blistered from the laundromat. "If I had answered, Jasmine," I said gently, "I would have driven to pick you up. I would have brought you home. I would have hired the lawyers. I would have paid off Hunter to make him go away. I would have fixed it. That is what fathers do," she sobbed. "No," I said, my voice hardening slightly. "That is what enablers do. For 26 years I fixed everything. When you failed a test, I hired a tutor. When you crashed your first car, I bought you a new one. When you wanted to marry a man I knew was a fraud, I paid for the wedding because I could not bear to see you unhappy." I took a sip of water. "And look where it got us," I continued. "It got us a daughter who did not know the value of $1, and a son-in-law who thought he could rob us blind. If I had picked up that phone last night, you would have learned nothing. You would have thought that no matter how big the mistake, Daddy Checkbook could solve it." I pointed to the blisters on her hands. "But you survived," I said. "You walked away from him. You worked for your meal. You slept in the cold. And when he threatened you, you did not crumble. You came to me, not for money, but for justice. You played your part in that cafe like a warrior." I leaned forward. "I did not answer the phone because I needed to see if you could save yourself. And you did." Jasmine looked at her hands. She flexed her sore fingers. She realized I was right. The fear she had felt last night had burned away the softness. It had forged something new. "I hate that you are right," she whispered, wiping her eyes. "But I hate myself more for letting it get this far. How did I become so blind? How did I let him fool me?" I stood up. "Stay here," I said. I walked to my study. I went to the wall safe behind the painting. I dialed the combination. Inside on the top shelf sat a worn leather book. It was burgundy with gold lettering that had faded over time. I picked it up. It smelled of lavender and old paper. It was Esther's diary. I walked back to the kitchen. I placed the book in front of Jasmine. "Your mother wrote this," I said. "She wrote it the week before she died. She made me promise to show it to you only when you were ready. I think you are finally ready." Jasmine touched the cover with trembling fingers. She opened it. Her mother handwriting looped across the page, familiar and comforting. "Read the entry marked October 14th, I said. Jasmine turned the pages. She found the date. She began to read aloud, her voice shaking. "My dearest Jasmine, if you are reading this, I am gone. I worry about you, my sweet girl. Your father loves you so much that he builds walls of gold around you to keep out the ugly world. But I worry that the gold has made you blind. You have such a big heart, but you give it to people who only love the shine, not the substance. I fear that one day a wolf will come dressed in silk, and you will not see his teeth until it is too late." Jasmine stopped. She choked on a sob. She continued reading. "My prayer for you is not that you have an easy life. My prayer is that you find the strength to walk through the fire when it comes. Do not let the money define you. Do not let the men define you. You are a haze. You come from people who built castles out of mud. Find your own mud, Jasmine. Get your hands dirty. That is where you will find your soul. I love you forever. Mom." Jasmine closed the book. She pressed it to her chest and wept. It was a guttural, cleansing cry. She cried for her mother. She cried for the wasted years. She cried for the shallow, empty person she had been. I walked around the island. I wrapped my arms around her. I let her cry into my shirt. She was right, Jasmine gasped. She saw it all. She saw Hunter before I ever met him. She saw the world clearly, I said, stroking her hair. And now so do you. Jasmine pulled back. She looked at me. Her face was blotchy and her eyes were swollen, but there was a fire in them that I had not seen since she was a child. "I am sorry, Daddy," she said. "I am so sorry I disrespected you. I am sorry I treated you like a bank account. I want to pay you back. Every cent, the wedding, the house, the lawyer fees, I will pay it all back." I smiled. "I do not want your money, Jasmine. I want your character." I picked up the phone. I unlocked it and cleared the notification of the missed calls. "The past is gone," I said. "Hunter is gone. The money is gone. We start from zero tonight." Jasmine nodded. "From zero," she repeated. "But zero is a dangerous place if you do not have a plan." "I have a plan," I said, "but it is not going to be easy. It is going to be the hardest thing you have ever done. Are you ready for the terms of your surrender?" Jasmine sat up straight. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. She looked at the blisters on her palms. She looked at her mother diary. "I am ready," she said. I looked at her, really looked at her. The spoiled girl was gone. The woman sitting in front of me was wounded, but she was standing on her own 2 feet. "Good," I said, "because tomorrow at dawn your real education begins." The sun had not yet risen when I placed the document on the kitchen island. The paper was crisp and white, sitting in stark contrast to the dark marble surface. Jasmine was sitting across from me, holding a mug of coffee with both hands. She was wearing one of my old flannel shirts. It was too big for her, hanging off her shoulders like a blanket, but it seemed to give her comfort. She looked at the paper. She did not reach for it immediately. She looked at me with eyes that were red-rimmed but clear. "This is not a punishment, Jasmine," I said, my voice low and steady. "This is a roadmap. For 26 years I carried you. I carried your financial burdens. I carried your mistakes. I carried your future. But a man cannot carry another adult forever without breaking his own back or crippling their legs. Last night you stood on your own 2 feet for the first time. This contract ensures you stay standing." Jasmine nodded slowly. She put the coffee down. "What does it say, Daddy?" I tapped the paper with my index finger. "3 conditions," I said. "Condition number 1 is restitution. You owe me $150,000 for the wedding that never happened. You owe me $20,000 for the legal fees to get Hunter arrested. And you owe me $10,000 for the damages to the house. You will pay back every single cent, not with a loan, not with a trust fund, but with wages." Jasmine swallowed hard. She did not argue. She did not say that it was impossible. She just listened. Condition number 2, I continued, is service. You have lived a life of taking. Now you will learn the art of giving. You will volunteer 30 hours a week at the St. Jude Community Kitchen. You will not be serving on the board of directors. You will be serving soup. You will be washing dishes. You will be mopping floors. You will look into the eyes of people who have nothing, and you will learn that dignity is not something you buy at a store. I paused to let the weight of that sink in. I watched her face. A year ago, she would have laughed. She would have called it ridiculous. Today, she simply lowered her head in acceptance. Condition number 3, I said, is total independence. I am cutting up your credit cards. I am selling the luxury car. You will take public transportation. You will live in the garage apartment behind the house, and you will pay me rent. If you need food, you buy it. If you need clothes, you earn them. I pushed a pen toward her. It was a cheap ballpoint pen, not the gold fountain pen I usually used. If you sign this, I will help you navigate this path. If you do not sign it, you can pack your bags and leave. I will not stop you, but I will not support you. Jasmine picked up the pen. Her hand did not shake. She did not read the fine print. She looked me in the eye. I do not need to read it, she said softly. I trust you, and I do not want to be the girl who needs to be carried anymore. She pressed the pen to the paper. The sound of her signature scratching against the document was the loudest sound in the room. It was the sound of a childhood ending and a womanhood beginning. She pushed the paper back to me. When do I start? She asked. Right now, I answered. Jasmine stood up. She walked out of the kitchen and up the stairs. I thought perhaps she was going to cry in her room. I thought she needed a moment to mourn the loss of her easy life. I stayed in the kitchen, drinking my coffee, waiting for the crash. 10 minutes later, she came back down. She was carrying a pair of heavy dressmaker shears in one hand and a trash bag in the other. She walked past me into the powder room off the hallway. I heard the water running. Then I heard a sound that made my heart stop for a second. Snip, snip, snip. It was the sound of steel cutting through hair. I walked to the doorway. Jasmine was standing in front of the mirror. Her long, chemically straightened hair, the hair that cost hundreds of dollars a month to maintain, was falling into the sink in long, dark ribbons. She was cutting it all off. She was hacking away the vanity. She was shearing the sheep. She did not stop until her hair was a short, natural crop close to her scalp. She looked different. Her neck looked long and elegant. Her cheekbones looked sharper. She looked like her mother. She put the scissors down. She ran her hand over her short hair. She looked at her reflection. She did not cry. She smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it was real. Then she walked into the living room. She opened the trash bag. She went to the closet where she kept her collection of designer handbags. Hermes, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, thousands of dollars of leather and status. She started throwing them into the bag. She did not handle them gently. She tossed them in like they were dirty laundry. "What are you doing?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "I am liquidating assets," she said, using a term she had heard me use 1,000 times, but never understood until now. "I can sell these. There is a consignment shop downtown. It should cover the first few months of rent and maybe a chunk of the debt." I watched her fill the bag. She was shedding her skin. The girl who cried over a broken nail was gone. In her place was someone I was starting to recognize, someone who looked a lot like a Hayes. "Take the bus," I said, pointing to the door. "The number 42 goes downtown." Jasmine tied the bag shut. She heaved it over her shoulder. It was heavy, but she did not complain. "I know," she said. "I checked the schedule." She walked out the front door into the morning light. She looked like a soldier marching off to war, a war for her own soul. The next 6 months were a blur of grit and exhaustion. I did not make it easy for her. I charged her rent on the first of the month, and if she was late, I charged a late fee. I watched her struggle. I watched her learn. I remember the first week at the soup kitchen. She came home smelling of old onions and bleach. Her hands were raw again. She fell asleep at the dinner table, her head resting on her arms. I did not wake her. I put a blanket over her shoulders and let her sleep. She was tired, with the good kind of tired, the tired that comes from honest work. I remember the second month. It was raining. I was driving home from the office, and I saw her at the bus stop. She was holding a plastic grocery bag, struggling to keep her umbrella open against the wind. My car has heated seats. My car has a quiet cabin, Every instinct screamed at me to pull over and let her in, to save her from the rain. But I drove past. I watched her in the rearview mirror. She did not look miserable. She looked determined. She was fighting the wind, and she was winning. By the third month, the complaints stopped. She no longer talked about what she had lost. She started talking about the people she met. She told me about Mr. Jenkins, a homeless veteran who played chess with her during her break. She told me about Maria, a single mother who was trying to get her GED. Jasmine started using her own money, the money she earned from selling her clothes, to buy books for Maria. She was not just serving soup anymore, she was serving hope. One evening in the 5th month, I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Jasmine was sitting at the table with a calculator and a notebook. She was frowning. "What is wrong?" I asked. "It is the inventory for the shelter," she said. "They are wasting money, Daddy. They are buying produce at retail prices instead of negotiating with the wholesalers. And their delivery schedule is inefficient. They are losing 20% of their budget on logistics." I smiled. I leaned over her shoulder. "So fix it," I said. "I am trying," she replied, tapping the page. "I called 3 vendors today. I got them to agree to a bulk discount if we consolidate the orders. I can save the shelter $2,000 a month. That is enough to feed 50 more families." I looked at the numbers. They were solid. Her logic was sound. She was using the brain I knew she had. She was thinking like a director of logistics. I put my hand on her shoulder. "Good work, Jasmine," I said. She looked up at me. Her face was bare of makeup. Her short hair framed her face. She looked beautiful. Not the plastic beauty of a magazine cover, but the radiant beauty of a woman who has found her purpose. "Thank you, Daddy," she said. The 6-month mark arrived on a Tuesday. I came home early. Jasmine was in the garage apartment. I knocked on the door. "Come in," she called out. I walked in. The apartment was small and simple. There was no expensive art on the walls, just a few photos of us and a framed picture of her mother. "I have something for you," I said. I handed her an envelope. Jasmine opened it. Inside was a check. It was for $5,000. "What is this?" she asked. "I called the director of the shelter," I said. "He told me about the new inventory system you implemented. He told me you saved them over $10,000 this quarter. He wanted to hire you as the operations manager, but he did not have the budget. So I made a donation to cover your salary for the first 3 months." Jasmine stared at the check. Her hands shook. "I earned this," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "You did. You are not a volunteer anymore, Jasmine. You are a professional." She looked up at me, tears shining in her eyes. "I paid off the house damage," she said, "and I have paid $5,000 toward the wedding debt. I still have a long way to go." "I know," I said. "But you are climbing the mountain, Jasmine, and for the first time you are climbing it without a rope." She stood up and hugged me. It was a strong hug, the hug of an equal. "I am proud of you," I whispered into her hair. She pulled back and smiled. "I am proud of me too," she said. And that was the moment I knew. The girl who texted me to stay away from her wedding was dead. The woman standing in front of me was someone entirely new. She was forged in fire, tempered by poverty and polished by hard work. She was a haze, and she was finally ready to carry the legacy. The mist on the lake at 6 in the morning is the most honest thing in the world. It does not hide the water. It simply rests upon it like a blanket until the sun burns it away. I sat in my small fishing boat a mile from the shore, holding a rod that I have owned since before Jasmine was born. The rhythm of the water against the aluminum hull was a steady heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. It was the sound of peace. It had been exactly 1 year since the wedding that never happened. 1 year since the text message that tried to break my heart. 1 year since I declared war on the entitlement that had infected my family. I reeled in the line slowly. I was not fishing for food. I was fishing for time. I have learned that retirement is not about doing nothing. It is about doing only the things that matter. For 40 years, my life was measured in shipping containers and profit margins. Now, it is measured in sunrise bass and the silence of the woods. I looked at my hands. They were still strong, but the tension was gone. The clenched fist of the protector had finally relaxed into the open palm of the grandfather, waiting for the future. I took a sip of coffee from my thermos. It was black and bitter, just the way I like it. I looked toward the shoreline where my cabin stood. It was a modest place, not the sprawling estate where I raised Jasmine. I had sold the big house 6 months ago. It was too much space for one old man, and too many ghosts lived in the hallways. I moved here to the lake house. It was smaller, simpler, and closer to the earth. It was part of my own downsizing, my own return to reality. I wanted Jasmine to see that you do not need a mansion to be a king. You just need a castle of your own making, even if it is built of cedar logs and stone. The water rippled. A fish struck the lure. I pulled back gently, setting the hook. I did not fight the fish with aggression. I guided it. I let it run when it needed to run, and I reeled it in when it tired. That is the secret to fishing, and it is the secret to parenting. You cannot force the outcome. You can only manage the struggle. I released the bass back into the water, watching it swim away strong and alive. It had fought a good fight. It deserved its freedom. I wished I could say the same for everyone in this story, but some people do not fight for freedom. They fight for dominance, and when they lose, they do not swim away. They sink. I put the rod down and picked up the newspaper I had brought with me. I turned to page 4. There was a small article near the bottom. It was not a headline anymore. The world moves on quickly from scandal, but for me, it was the final chapter of a dark book. The headline read, "Former socialite husband sentenced to 10 years for federal fraud, Hunter Bishop." I looked at his mugshot. He did not look like the arrogant young man who had sipped my scotch and mocked my labor. He looked hollow. His hair was shaved close to his scalp. His skin was pale. His eyes were dead. The article detailed his sentencing. The judge had not been lenient. The sheer volume of the evidence, coupled with the extortion attempt against Jasmine, had painted a picture of a predator who needed to be removed from society. 10 years in a federal penitentiary, no parole for at least 8. I folded the paper. I knew more than the article said. I still had friends in the system. Agent Miller had called me last week to give me an update. He told me that Hunter was not having an easy time inside. Prison is a place where hierarchy is physical, not financial. Hunter tried to use his old tricks. He tried to bribe guards with money he did not have. He tried to talk down to other inmates. He learned very quickly that in a cage, a wolf in sheep's clothing is just a sheep. Miller told me that Hunter had been assigned to the laundry detail. It was poetic justice. The man who refused to work a day in his life was now spending 10 hours a day washing the dirty uniforms of other criminals. He was scrubbing stains. He was folding sheets. He was doing exactly what Jasmine had done in the laundromat, but without the hope of redemption. Jasmine scrubbed for dignity. Hunter scrubbed for survival. I did not feel happy about his suffering. I am not a cruel man. I do not take pleasure in the destruction of a human life, but I felt satisfied. I felt the balance of the universe correcting itself. Hunter had sown seeds of deceit, and now he was harvesting a crop of stone walls and iron bars. He had gambled his freedom on the belief that I was weak and that Jasmine was stupid. He lost the bet. I threw the newspaper into the bottom of the boat. I did not need to read it again. Hunter was the past. He was a cautionary tale, a ghost story I would tell my grandchildren one day to warn them about the monsters that wear expensive suits. I heard the sound of gravel crunching on the driveway up the hill. I looked toward the cabin. A car was pulling in. It was not a Porsche. It was not a Mercedes. It was a 3-year-old Honda Civic. It was sensible. It was reliable. And it was fully paid for. I pulled the anchor up. The chain rattled against the side of the boat. I started the small outboard motor and headed for the dock. By the time I tied up the boat, she was walking down the wooden steps to meet me. Jasmine looked different. Her hair had grown out a little into a soft bob that framed her face. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater. She was not wearing any jewelry except for a small silver watch she had bought with her first paycheck as the operations manager of the shelter. She was carrying a basket. "Hi, Daddy," she called out. Her voice was different too. It was deeper, resonant. It had lost that high-pitched whine of entitlement. It was the voice of a woman who gives orders and expects them to be followed because she knows what she is doing. I climbed out of the boat. She hugged me. It was a solid hug. "I brought lunch," she said. "I made that chicken pot pie you like. And I brought the check." I looked at her. The final check. "You are early," I said. "You still have 6 months on the repayment schedule." Jasmine smiled. She picked up the basket. "I got a bonus," she said. "We cut food waste by 30% this quarter. The board voted to give me a performance raise. I wanted to clear the debt, Daddy. I wanted to be free today." We walked up the hill together. We sat on the porch of the cabin looking out over the water. We ate the pie. It was delicious, better than any catered meal at a resort. I looked at my daughter. I saw the faint scars on her hands from those early days at the laundromat. They were fading, but they were still there. They were her battle scars. They were the proof that she had walked through the fire. You know, I said, wiping a crumb from my lip. A year ago, you told me I did not fit your aesthetic. You told me I ruined the vibe. Jasmine looked down. She blushed slightly, but she did not look away. She owned her past. I was blind, she said. I thought class was about what you owned. I thought it was about fitting in with people like Hunter. I did not know that class is about standing out because you have integrity. She reached into her bag and pulled out the check. She handed it to me. Paid in full, she said. I took the check. I looked at the amount. It was the last installment of the $180,000 she owed me. She had paid back every penny. She had lived on rice and beans. She had worked 60-hour weeks. She had sacrificed everything to clear her name. I took the check and I tore it in half. Then I tore it again. Jasmine gasped. Daddy, what are you doing? That is real money. I put the pieces in my pocket. I do not need the money, Jasmine, I said. I never needed the money. I needed to know that you could earn it. I needed to know that you respected it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. It was not jewelry. It was a key. This is the key to this cabin, I said. And inside the cabin in the safe is the deed to the estate. I put it in a trust for you. Jasmine started to cry, but not the hysterical tears of the past. These were tears of gratitude. I do not want the estate back, she said. I like my apartment. I like my life. I know, I said. That is why you are ready to have it. You can sell it. You can live in it. You can turn it into a shelter. I do not care. It is your legacy now, because you are finally a Hayes. She took the key. She held it tight. Thank you, Daddy, she whispered, for not answering the phone. I smiled. I looked out at the lake. The sun was high now. The mist was gone. Everything was clear. My name is Quincy Hayes. I am a father. I am a builder. And I am a man who learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is to let your children fall so they can learn to fly. If you have ever had to make a hard choice to save someone you love, hit that like button. If you believe that character is worth more than gold, subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, what is the hardest lesson you ever had to learn? I am going back to fishing now. The water is calm, and for the first time in a long time, so am I. I learned that the most dangerous thing you can give a child is a life without consequences. For years I thought I was protecting Jasmine by shielding her from the rain, but I was actually drowning her. True love is not about writing a check to fix a mistake. It is about having the courage to let them fail so they can find their own strength. You cannot buy character. You have to forge it in the fire of struggle. And to anyone listening who feels trapped by their own kindness, remember that being a doormat is not a virtue. Stand up for yourself, because if you do not respect your own boundaries, nobody else will. If you agree that real love sometimes means saying no, then hit that like button. If you want to hear more stories about justice and redemption, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments below, have you ever had to practice tough love with someone you care about? I read every single comment. See you in the next story.